Well, it was the beautiful straight teeth. Like that was, I felt very flattered. Like that's, obviously, my real life teeth are a bit munted, but every thumbnail where I'm smiling, I'm showing my teeth. Boy, those are some almost as nice as yours. But I have to say, you've really gone above and beyond. Although I dread to think what this means subconsciously about what you think about. That makes me nervous. But I've got to say, giving me that effing enormous hand in that thumbnail. I mean, honestly, that is the hand of Andre the Giant attached to my little toothpick arm. I don't know what you're trying to say, but whatever it is, you're right. Whatever you're trying to say, you're right. You're right.
You look like, to be fair, it's like kind of like it's elephantitis. Isn't that what it's called? Elephant syndrome?
Look,
when you have like a giant extremity.
People said in the comments earlier before the show, they said that you look like you know what you're doing and I look confused. What they don't realize, because they can't see the compass, is that I'm confused because you think you know what you're doing, but actually you're pointing at the nullarbor. Like we will be walking for weeks if we go in that direction. That's why I'm confused.
Maybe that's the better direction, to be fair, because every direction that we're going in currently is not good. So maybe it's time to just throw caution to the wind.
It feels that way, but I just did a bit of a good news video, which, as you know, they always tank. It's going to go out tomorrow and it'll probably get seen by 6 people. People don't want good news, but I just did a bit of a good news video because when you actually round up what's happening around the world, particularly in the EU, this is a roundup of different facets of what's going on in the EU. But it's the same journey that we're on here in Australia with One Nation, which we will be talking about tonight. Actually, there's some really good stuff happening. People just kind of want the doom and gloom. They want me to tell them that the world is ending, that the fuel shortage is going to turn into absolute starvation. It's time to head for the hills with 10,000 rounds of ammunition and go and live in shipping containers. People actually want that, and I'm really, really, really sorry to be the one that has to tell you this. It's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As much as you might be ready for the asteroid.
Well, I like to joke, right? Because I've become an accelerationist. I'm like, honestly, at this point, I'm sort of like hands off the wheel. I'm just like, you guys are steering the ship. I'm just along for the ride. I'm not emotionally invested in it. Every day, like I see more people freaking out and carrying on and interpreting everything through this like doomsday lens. I'm like, there's no point me saying anything. Just let it go on. Yeah, whatever. We'll talk once it's all done, shall we? Which is why I'm ready for the asteroid.
But you think you're ready for the asteroid. But I question that because you didn't know what my little handle meant, knows where his towel is. People jump in the comments. If Carly doesn't know what it means to know where your towel is she really ready for the asteroid? Is she really ready for you? Tell me in the comments. I don't think she is.
I have absolutely zero clue what you're referring to. All I know is it just makes me feel even younger whenever you make some kind of cultural reference that's from the dinosaur era. I just realize how youthful I truly am.
Listen, youthful, also synonyms are like naive, clueless, been living under a rock, uncultured.
Clueless is a great movie. Fantastic movie.
See, this is the thing. You're going with Clueless. I'm going with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I am better than you. We have just proved it.
Literally never seen that movie. Never seen it.
So, you just referred to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as a movie.
Oh, is it a documentary?
Trilogy. It is a trilogy of books. It is a trilogy in 4 parts, of which they then wrote a 5th. It is absolutely fabulous. I've read them all and loved them. And,
isn't it a movie?
They made a movie out of it. The movie was rubbish. The towels are the most useful thing in the universe. And if you are going to be a galactic hitchhiker, if you are going to travel intergalactically, you must know where your towel is. And to say that, oh, he really knows where his towel is a high compliment. It means he's got his shit together. So
is this
I know
where
like
nerdy Star Trek, Star Wars nonsense?
No.
Who's that? Isn't that Spock guy? Like, I don't know.
You might as well be saying use the Force, Harry.
I know none of this. I've only ever seen one Star Wars because G made me watch it so I could force him to watch Harry Potter. I've never even seen Star Wars.
How is this conversation happening right now? What have I done with my life?
G almost dumped me when he heard that. He was like, outrageous. I don't know, man. I had better things to do, like rewind CDs. I just
I have
these
made
movies.
a terrible mistake.
Carl, you are
Even
so
Dr.
far off
Lynette.
this.
Dr. Lynette does not strike me as a massive science fiction fan. No offense, if maybe you are, but like just having met you, don't strike me as like being deep
There's
down the science
mutiny by
fiction
the
rabbit
Oddies.
hole. And
I
even
think
she
the Oddies.
knows.
The Oddies are outraged with you. Maybe I have to watch it. I don't know. It doesn't interest me. It's stupid. Sorry.
Okay. What's our first topic? I don't know where to go from here. I
Well,
genuinely I've got
talked
nothing,
about
guys.
good
I've got
news.
nothing.
All right, I've got a good segue. You've talked
Okay.
about good news. I have good news for you. Did you
Okay.
know that we had the most phenomenal event over the weekend here in Melbourne? It was the Marxist
hang
conference.
on. Whoa, stop. Let me guess. Someone walked down an alleyway and didn't get hacked to death.
Better, if you can believe it. It
Wow.
was the Congregation of Socialists and Marxists for the annual Marxism conference in Melbourne.
Yeah,
And
you know what? I meant to be there. And then
I know.
You sent me that reminder about rewinding my CDs. So
I know. So thankfully,
yeah,
there were people who were able to go for us, which is fantastic. So I thought it was only fair that we play their video and learn a little bit about it. So, it's really important, guys. This stuff is vital information. I mean, what more could we want to learn?
I read a poster once that said Marxism is the future, and I believe it because it wasn't on the internet. It was on a light post. So it must be true. And therefore, we need to stay across this.
I'm not reading that out, but that's hilarious.
Marxism conference in Melbourne. Yes.
That's niche humor, but I love it.
Niche,
right.
very, but yes.
Shall we learn what we missed out on at the Marxist conference? Allow me to...
Please fill me in.
All right. I know we're all waiting with bated breath. I'll start it again.
I'm going around asking people what sessions they were just in and what some key takeaways were. What session were you just in?
I was in a session about the Democratic Socialists of America, and a key takeaway is the strategy of the DSA is a dead-end one for left-wing people, and we should actually be building independent organizations on the basis of Marxist and revolutionary politics.
I was just at the session on the Palestinian resistance poetry. It talked about how in the kind of hardest times, how poetry can be a way of staying steadfast, and that during resistance it gives a voice to the oppressed. So I thought it was a very inspiring session.
I was at the transphobia session. It was really useful and I think also inspiring to hear about how we've been able to combat the transphobic far right in the past.
I was at the session on the middle class roots of fascism, and a lot of the discussion was about how even though the middle class do provide the shock troops for fascist movements, especially throughout history, ultimately when fascists come to power, they serve big business, and in doing that, they smash up both the middle class and the working class.
I was just at the session of Women in the Russian Revolution, and my highlight of that session was about the important role that women actually played during the Russian Revolution and during struggles in general.
I was just at a session about resisting Trump's America and the popular anti-ICE rebellions. And I thought
sure Trump
really
is shaking
important key
his boot.
takeaway was the power and the heroic kind of...
No testosterone was detected there. I mean, it goes on.
None.
I'd hate to overwhelm you with excitement.
I'm on antibiotics. I'm on really strong antibiotics at the moment, and that really messes with your gut bacteria. But I can tell you there is more IQ in the bowl after I'm finished than what we just saw in that video.
Do you know what? I want to laugh at these kids. I really do. But I actually feel genuine sadness because, and I can say this as someone who's got the tertiary degree, what they are learning at their universities is absolutely criminal. And I'm going to come from it for this. This is the way I'm going to phase it, right? I do believe that university has its place, all right? I don't think we should abolish universities. Universities definitely need to be here. But the issue is that most of them are full of people who have never actually worked a real job. They've been indoctrinated. Yep. They're not being taught resourceful skills. And as we know, all of these universities are now incredibly expensive. Even if you put them on HECS, you're settling yourself with like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, right? Before you've even got a full-time job. And these kids are being scammed. That's what it is. Like you're coming out with a degree in social studies or arts or whatever, but it doesn't actually qualify you for anything. It allows you to enjoy these ideologies and to entertain all these utopian fantasies, but the real world application isn't there. And so these kids, I actually feel really sorry for them. Like, I know everyone's gonna be like, they're idiots, but they've probably paid for this education. They've got no way to use it in the real world. They're saddled with debt, and their only opportunities are going to be either working in the public system or NDIS or God knows what else.
Well, but I disagree. I think actually they are going to go on to be tremendously valuable members of society, because every generation needs its cautionary tales. Every generation needs the drunk in the gutter that you can point to as you cross the street holding your kid's hand and say, this is what that person did wrong in their life. Don't do what they did. And I just think, look, the next generation of drunks in the gutter are actually going to be heroin addicts with blue hair, probably in a share house, but it sort of serves the same societal function. I think they're going to be very valuable.
Yeah, look, I like, as much as it's fun to kind of pay these kids out, I actually look at that and go, man, your parents failed you, your university failed you, and I'm terribly sorry. I haven't made you guys drink yet, so can I just ask you guys to all grab your drinks, because I'm going to say one of our favorite words, which is when I was doing my master's. All right, you're welcome. You're welcome. Just keeping you all hydrated. When I was in my group, like every time it was a new semester, you had a new influx of people doing your masters. And at any given time, there was maybe 6 to 10 people in each new wave of people. And of those people, my group was actually amazing. So I was the youngest by like 35 years. All the other people in my group were in their 70s. And they were all retirees, basically. One was a naturopath, one was a engineer, and the other one was a school principal. So like these were really cool people to work around. But the wave before us were all young kids in their 20s, and they'd literally just gone from their bachelors, they were doing their masters. And then the group after us was a whole bunch of raging progressives. And like, this is the way I think of it, right? Like, I am a capitalist and I am very entrepreneurial. So the only reason I did my master's, I've said this before, was because I know, and it's already proving to do it. It's giving me the credibility in those people.
You've been vindicated. You've been vindicated on that decision for sure.
100%. Like, my Instagram has grown by almost 40,000 people because I'm doing these educational pieces and I have a master's. If I had done this without the qualification, they'd be like, oh, sorry, can't take you seriously. You need that bit of paper.
Gatekeep. Yeah.
Right. And I know it's ridiculous, guys. I'm pointing out the ridiculousness of it, but I played the game, right? But as we were going through and we're listening to these people present their projects and their topics, you're paying $45,000 for the privilege, by the way. That's what your master's degree costs you. And it's 2 years of your life. And they're talking, like, one of them was the intersectionality buzzword of queer experience in suburban Melbourne. And I'm like, how indulgent? Like, no issue, right? Like, if that's what you're interested in, but how the fuck do you apply that to your career? What is that going to help? Like, how is that going to help anyone? And I kept asking them, I'm like, I got told off by my lecturer in the end because I kept saying the same thing. How do you suppose you're going to sustain yourself? How are you going to generate an income off this? And my lecturer ended up saying to me, Carly, like, you can't keep asking that question. It's kind of rude. I'm like, but what the fuck else are we here for?
Yeah.
What are we here for?
That's where the education system crosses over into a genuine Ponzi scheme. Like, it is actually just a scam at that point in the literal sense, because the promise of university is you take on the debt, you spend the time, you become worth more in the Oh, sorry, we back? Right. That's the whole premise. That's the whole premise of HEX is, hey, society should offer finance for people to do university degrees because they'll earn more money and pay more tax, and that'll be worth more to society. That's the whole premise of free education in the first place. So that assumption is baked into the cake. They can't get away from that assumption. The problem is they have these degrees that are only worth money if that person goes on to be a university lecturer. It holds no value anywhere else. The only thing you can do that is money with a degree like that is to go and teach that same degree to other people who will only ever be worth money if they go and teach the same degree. At that point, it is just a pyramid scheme. That's all it is. And it literally fits the actual definition of a scam when you're talking about those sorts of degrees.
And I've got a reel that I was going to work on, and it's basically talking about that, how we're placing this overemphasis on education and university as opposed to real world thinking and, being grounded in reality. But I haven't filmed that yet, so don't worry. I won't spam you with a reel just yet. But can we please talk about Albo's address, because that happened after Wednesday's podcast?
Yeah.
Did you watch it live?
Now. I did, regrettably. Let me just quickly deal with this comment here. Last week had less than 100 live viewers. Tonight 300. Interesting. Actually, last week we had a couple. We had, was it 1,800?
2,700 at its peak last week.
Yeah, at its peak. So whatever number you see is just how many are watching on the specific channel that you're watching on. We're going out to multiple YouTube channels, multiple Facebook pages, multiple X accounts. So,
and don't forget that we all share the same audience. So, like, the chances are most people follow all of us. They're just jumping on one of our streams,
Okay, so so Albanese said, "I want the entire nation's attention at 7:00 tonight." I'm led to believe Home and Away got bumped, and people were quite annoyed about Home and Away being delayed.
That's still going.
I don't know. It was one of those shows. I can't remember which one it was, but there were people annoyed that got delayed by 10 minutes. And my phone was blowing up. People saying, "Oh, what's it going to be? Is it, are we going to war in Iran? Are we sending a ship? Are we, is rationing starting?" I've got a couple of friends that have gone really deep down the kind of not genuine paranoia, but they are stocking up because they believe that on the 20th of April, Australia's going to run out of fuel. I believe they're completely wrong. But nevertheless, they're good people, but that's the conclusion they've come to, and that's what they're prepping for. So my phone's blowing up with every form of doom mongering. And I'm sitting there going, none of those make sense. Like, I'm watching the fuel supplies, I'm watching the shipments, I'm watching the bookings. We're going to be okay. Like, on the fuel front, it's going to suck for a while longer. Prices aren't going to come down in a hurry, but we're going to be okay. The supply will be there. War-wise, no, Australia's not getting involved. We can't even send a functional ship halfway around the world for screw that for a joke. I'm going through the options, and I ended up just going, I have no idea what's going to come out of his mouth. I don't. None of the options that everyone on my phone seems to think is going to happen makes sense to me. So I'm left with nothing. Turns out I was right because it was literally a massive nothing burger. I hadn't consciously thought maybe he's actually just going to blabber on for 7 minutes and say nothing at all. But that is
3 minutes.
What he
That's
did.
All we got. 3 minutes of a pre-scripted, awkward message.
That annoyed me. The fact that it was not live. If you're going to book out every single network at 7:00 and say, "Hey nation, I want your undivided attention," you'd bloody well better be coming to us live. Don't give us some piece of pre-recorded crap. You pre-record that crap, stick it up as a YouTube video and leave us alone.
To be honest, it just shows you how much of a coward he is that he couldn't do it live. So a couple of things on this. I saw that and I thought it was going to be fuel rations, to be fair, more so at precautionary, like, hey guys, we're doing it for the good. It's, we all need to work together. But the thing that really pissed me off, and I am going to play my reel for this one because I was ready for it.
Because we need a drink. Yeah.
We do need a drink. This is the hydration podcast. I'm calling it.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
The thing that bothered me most about that address was, firstly, it was announced in the morning and it gave people 8-10 hours to sit there and catastrophize. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. And that's quite evil, right? That is quite cruel, particularly people who are only like 5 years out of COVID, right? These are people who used to sit there and wait for the government to tell them what to do next. And I think on the left and the right, this wasn't a political side thing. This was just more of a, holy shit, what's next? This is serious. Yeah. Because those kind of addresses are only reserved for deadly serious things where there is a huge need for the entire nation to tune in. To do that and to waffle the way he did, and he kind of smirked like, I already don't like this bloke, but I hated him even more. And this is why, right? There was one particular thing he said at around the 1 minute 50 mark. We've got to do things the Australian way. We need to chip in for Australia because we're Australians, right? Sorry, I can't actually quite get that lisp. It's more of
we're Australians.
I don't know how it talks. I don't know. Anyway, what I'm saying is that pissed me off more than anything else. Fuel crisis aside, Iran aside, talking about being Australian, right? This is the guy who has demonized everything that is Australian. This is the bloke who thinks that the old Australia is dead and the new Australia is what we should be prescribing to. So I had this ready to go, and I think we need to watch it because I think everyone is going to agree with me. Let me rile it up because,
guys,
again,
can I just suggest you book a bed in the local emergency room? You're going to need it by the end of this episode.
I only play one reel an episode. Relax. I'm responsible with your drinking. Oh, look at all those Carlz's. That's creepy, isn't it? All right,
Terrifying.
ready? All right. It has been an absolutely diabolical week in Australian politics. And I don't just mean at the federal level, I mean at state levels as well. And I, for one, am just so fucking embarrassed that this is the level of leadership we have been reduced to in this country. The fact that Anthony Albanese thought to call a national address after sending the country into panic for almost 8 hours yesterday to tell them absolutely nothing and to be Australian when for the last, 10 years, we have been demonizing anyone that shows any level of nationalism in this country, a country that is so divided, that is embarrassed by our own flag, and yet our politicians sit there and say, just be Australian, when we don't even know what that fucking means anymore. I, for one, would love some clarity from our Prime Minister around what an Australian actually is, because everything I consider it to be, I've been told by the political left is evil, is wrong, something that I should be perpetually apologising for, something that I should carry around with a heavy weight of guilt on my shoulders. In fact, people like Anthony Albanese and his good mate Daniel Andrews have told me I'm anything but Australian for what I stand for. They want people like me censored and kicked off the internet. People like me who believe in smaller government, less bureaucracy and less regulation that's stifling innovation and suffocating businesses, less tax burden on the middle class, that there's two sexes and a woman is a biological female and children can't be cats, that maybe we should heed the warnings of the Iranians, the Venezuelans and the Cubans when they speak about extremists and dictatorships. For the last 10 years, speaking common sense had me labelled a right-wing nutjob, a cooker, a right-wing extremist, a Nazi sympathiser, a fascist. These are all words that have come out of our Prime Minister's mouth. Now, all of a sudden, being Australian means something again? Should we dig out the old Qantas ad, I am, you are, we are Australian? It sure does seem like Anthony Albanese likes us divided until it's no longer politically convenient for him. The mess we're in is unsurprising to anyone who's been paying attention the last decade. For the last 30 years, our politicians have run this nation into the ground and made terrible decisions that put us in the crisis that we're in now. Australians have gone from being apolitical or apathetic about politics to treating it like a sport, where now we ride or die by our political team. All the Labor sycophants will be running interference for Albanese all day, saying he was making the tough call last night, when really what they should be doing is being more discerning about their own political side and questioning when they make poor judgments. But in summary, no, I don't. Anyway, you get the point. Yeah, and sure enough, as expected, people just like, yeah, what the fuck is Australian these days? Because what is Anthony Albanese's definition? Because everything I thought it was, everything I've been fighting for, I've been told is bad.
Yeah, and this is where this kind of politics runs into itself sooner or later. You can't sit there and demonize Australia and then call on people to be Australian. Like, sorry, you can't have it both ways. In the same way that you can't demonize masculinity in men and then think that we're going to be an independent nation that's got a functional military and all that sort of stuff. Like you can't have it both ways. Most things in life come with good and bad combined. If you identify the bad in something and then throw the baby out with the bathwater rather than targeting the specific, then you end up in a situation where you lose all the good that goes with it as well. And to your point, we've lost the understanding of what it is, what it means to be an Australian. And even if we were to remember that, we are not allowed, and we're not allowed to be proud of being an Australian. Yeah, I think it really grates me when I hear politicians talk about unity, because they thrive on division. We know that they divide and conquer. We know that. The easiest way for a politician to increase their own personal popularity is to segment the population and pit different groups against each other. That's literally 101, politics 101. Albanese, the Labor Party, certainly have made an entire career out of that. I would say that's literally what their current electoral success is based on.
And so, literally the next day, he said that social media is to blame and all the independent journalists and all the independent media was to blame for the lack of social cohesion. So thanks, Albo.
Yeah. So shall we cover a bit more about the fuel situation?
Yeah. Bring us up to speed.
Well, okay. So there was a graphic that went around a little while ago that showed the ships that were on the water bringing fuel to Australia. It showed the name of the ship and when it was going to arrive and what it was carrying and where it came from and all that stuff. And I did a bit of research, and as best as I could tell, it was genuine. And it was this manifest of about 30 odd ships that were on the water. I did a video that I included this manifest in, and I don't think I went into enough detail into this specific issue. It showed where these ships were from. And so South Korea, Singapore, there were a lot of them from Singapore. There were a couple from a few other places, then South Korea. And then the last three, the three that were the furthest away, and therefore would be the last to arrive, were from the US. But what people said was there's only, however many it was, 30 odd ships on this list. And then that's it. That's all we're getting. There's no more on the list. Mm-hmm. And I took one look at the list and I realized, no, hang on. In the lower part of the list, the ships that are all arriving within the next week, we've got a mix of different origins, South Korea and Singapore being the main two, but as well as a few others. Then after that, they're all from South Korea. And then after that, there's the three from America. It's not that there's no other ships. It's that there's no other ships already on the water with a booked arrival date and port into Australia. That's what that manifest was. The fact is the ships from South Korea take longer than the ships from Singapore. And so therefore there's more of them on the water at any given point in time, and their arrival dates are later. So they end up further up the list. The ones from the US are going to take ages to get here. So of course they were the last three on the list. It doesn't mean that no other ship is going to leave port. That's and I don't think I quite went hard enough on that point. So there's a lot of people that saw that list, not necessarily from me, it did the rounds, and they went, oh, that's the date, that's the end date, and that's when it all goes tits up and we're all going to run out of fuel. So no, that's not what that list means. It's not what it says. Arrivals are down on their normal level. However, and I mark this day in your diary because this is not something I'm often going to say, this government has actually done a reasonable job under the circumstances. We should never have been in these circumstances, that's a given, but given the circumstances that we're in, the Albanese government, and actually it's the trade minister, whose name escapes me. I've talked about him before in some of my other videos on other topics. He's actually really good. He's actually a very competent human being, one of the best that the Labor Party have. The Australian trade minister has done a really, really good job of maintaining relationships with our mutual suppliers. And there's a lot of countries that we ship coal and gas and so forth to, that send us their refined petroleum products. Japan don't actually send us a lot of refined petroleum products, but they receive a lot of our shipments of energy in the form of coal and gas. And so what they've done is they've reached out to all of these trading partners and said, hey, listen, if we end up in a really tight energy situation, that's going to affect our ability to export to you. So we would love to be sure of our exports to you, but that means we need to be sure of our petroleum imports. Can you help us out? Which I think is a really good approach. And the response has actually been really positive. So we've got, there's different outlets saying different things, but fundamentally, let me just quickly check this one here. Fundamentally, we will not run out of fuel. We will continue to have high prices. The purpose of high prices, as I've talked about before, is to suppress demand. That will continue to be the case. We do need to continue to suppress some demand, but this is not an existential crisis. We are not about to have all of our industry stop dead in the water and all of us to be dying as a result of shortages of fuel or any of that sort of nonsense. To be fair,
whenever I hear that kind of stuff, I always think, all right, let's reverse engineer that. Let's just say that happened. You think Albo wants to be the prime minister that let the fuel pumps run dry? As much as I dislike these people, I guarantee they are off, running around like crazy people trying to solve the issue, right? The issue they made, of course, but I don't think they want to be like Chris Bowen for all of his ridiculousness. He's probably sitting there going, oh shit, we better get some oil happening.
So they know that this is an election losing issue for them. If they don't get on top of this, that completely screws them. But also they can win a lot of brownie points. So for example, they halved the fuel excise, which is a move that I actually think is a bad idea for reasons I've covered before. We need the high prices, regrettably, but we need the high prices to suppress demand so that demand drops to meet the level of supply that we have. Cutting the excise, ordinarily, I would 100% approve. And if it was a permanent cut and they're abolishing it, I'd be all for it. But as a temporary measure to improve fuel affordability, it's literally the wrong thing. Polling says it has 83% support. So the public, obviously not generally well-versed in economics, they're feeling the pain in the hip pocket. I get where they're coming from, but this is the same sort of mentality that's got us into the mess that we've got, where we've got, $1 trillion in debt and nothing to show for it. The government gives, spends, and people don't think about where that money's coming from. So the reality is Albanese has been able to turn this into a political win for himself. There are people who seem to think that Albanese wants Australia to burn. I don't think that's the case. He believes that he's far more capable of governing than what he actually is. But actually, if you were to sit down and get his genuine answers about what he wants for Australia, it would sound like all the right things. He wants Australia to thrive and be successful and be inclusive and be this and be that. Sounds all very lovely. He has no idea what he's doing, and many of his policies are actually counter. They're going to go in the opposite direction to what he thinks. But he's not actually motivated by evil. And it was Don Farrell. Don Farrell is the Australian Trade Minister. And him and his assistant Trade Minister, Thistlethwaite, I think his name is. I had his name here a second ago. Matt Thistlethwaite. The two of them have absolutely saved Albo's ass by going out to these trade partners who they've got really good relationships with and getting assurances of continued supply. Japan are stepping up. We don't normally get a lot from Japan. They're stepping up. Singapore, we do normally get a lot from, and we've had guarantees from them that we will continue to get supply. But also understand we're able to win those negotiations because the price at the pump is higher in Australia than it is in other places that are trying to compete with us for the fuel. The high prices at the pump are actually the reason why we're able to secure additional supply in a competitive global market. So I'm sorry, I get it. It hurts. It sucks. But actually, and I do not say this often, given the situation, the federal government are actually handling this okay.
Yeah, I will say though, I haven't noticed any difference with the halving of the fuel excise. I think last time I checked, it was $2.
Diesel go down.
Did you? It's $2.36 here for unleaded, and that's above what I was paying prior for the whole Iran situation. So is that implying that it would be almost $2.60 a litre? I don't know.
Well, it has been. Petrol's been well up here. And then diesel hit $3.30, and then now it's dropped to about $2.95, something like that. So I've watched it all play out, and it all seems to be pretty fair play. Everyone seems to be playing it with a pretty straight bat. Again, we shouldn't be in this situation to begin with. Australia should have its own fuel security. But given that we're in this situation, I'm sorry, some people are going to hate me for saying it, but actually the way this is being handled is not terrible. And this situation is not, unless something else happens that then compounds on top of the current situation, the situation we are currently in is not an existential crisis.
Yeah, look, and the one thing I will say too is, like, let's not make a crisis out of something that's not a crisis. Let's save that escalation for moments when there is definitely when it's warranted. Yeah. I think with all of this unease and everything that's coming out, like it's forcing people to abandon their progressive ideology, right? Like all of a sudden, all of the climate change discussion has stopped immediately. Because there's now a new enemy, right? And the enemy is extortion at the fuel pump. Now, of course, we're talking about people who aren't necessarily well-versed in economics. We're talking about people who are ideologically captured. But in a weird way, like this is a silver lining, which is a bit of a segue from what we're talking about, but something to think about. You've got progressive lefties and hardline lefties who are now having to recognize how important fossil fuels are for the running of this country, particularly when it talks about our farmers and food security. So finally, this conversation is now on the table. And of course, yes, there's people pushing renewables, but realistically, I think people are now starting to see with their own eyes that, oh, okay, look, renewables aren't necessarily the answer. They're a nice to have. But at the end of the day, I want to know that our country is like viable and sustainable. And at the moment, it's not.
And you can have renewables up to about 20, maybe 25% of your grid, and they don't create the additional system costs. Anything like what they do is you try and push past 30%, 35%. So that initial rush of renewables into our system, it did increase our prices, but not horribly, and it didn't destabilize the grid to the point that it was actually at risk of actual collapse. The reason why, for example,
sorry, I've been seeing this go around, like people talking about the petrol prices in Bali, And you guys need to understand that the fuel in Bali is heavily subsidized by the government because they're incredibly poor. Like this is the thing. Sorry.
Fuel was 3 cents a litre in Venezuela when I was there in 2015. Yes, you can have a drink. But trust me, you would not have wanted to have swapped with them for the 3 cent per litre fuel.
Yeah, and I think that's a false equivalence, trying to compare the prices in a country like Indonesia to Australia. And, you know, the other thing I'll say to that, like if fuel in Indonesia is $1 or whatever it was that it said, yes, but how much do they earn? It's like what, 1/50th of what we earn per annum? So let's just keep that in mind.
But also, even if that were true, if it's $1 a litre over there, and it wasn't heavily subsidized, so that's literally what the actual the distributors and importers, etc., that was the revenue going into the stream. Well, then every single ship currently bound for Indonesia would be redirecting to Australia because they can get 3 times that, they can get 2.5 times that. So that's the job of prices. One thing is that it matches supply to demand. The other thing is that it incentivizes more supply, and that's what we are benefiting from, whether we like it or not. We are benefiting from that. Now, I love this comment here from 85. Are you happy for me to segue into the story that we talked about before the show?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, right. So, guys, you will have all seen tweet after Facebook post after gloating politician on television saying that the Straits of Hormuz being closed is proof that we need to accelerate the transition to net zero, EVs, all that stuff. Sunlight, sunlight doesn't get stuck in the Straits of Hormuz. We've all seen variations on that theme. Okay, hold that thought. I want to show you a video. This story isn't about this video, but this video is a reference point. It is a baseline that I want to draw before we get into this. Have a watch. You'll probably remember this. This is where a Tesla truck outdragged a Porsche 911 whilst towing a Porsche 911 on a trailer. Now, the reason I bring this up is because that's how you do a stunt. If you want to impress people with what some new technology is capable of, you do something genuinely unexpected, something that they sit there and go, holy crap, I've never seen that before. That's how you do it. Now, the reason I bring this up is because there are companies in Australia who are trying to impress us with electric trucks. They're trying to do stunts to blow us away with how incredibly good electric trucks are in Australia. Now, we're just going to have to do a little bit of skipping here.
Company. By combining low-cost renewable...
Hang on, sorry, I got that wrong. There we go.
New Energy Transport is Australia's first zero-emission trucking company. By combining low-cost renewable energy, high-speed charging and electric prime movers, New Energy Transport offers zero-emission road freight at the same cost as diesel freight. We just transported a semi-trailer full of essential household goods for our customer who gives a crap from their distribution centre in Sydney all the way to Canberra on a single charge.
Stop the press.
What's that, like 3 hours? 3 hours?
Call the Prime Minister. He needs to do another address to the nation. A truck has driven non-stop from Sydney to Canberra with a single trailer loaded to the brim, I will have you know, with toilet paper. That is not how you do a stunt. That is not how you impress people with a new technology. This is not how you prove anything.
To be fair, it was titled, Who Gives a Crap? So they're kind of answering the question, who actually gives a crap about this stunt?
I cannot, like, somebody signed off on that and said, hang on. Not only are we going to do that, we're going to bring in a video production crew to do a video about it. We're going to have drones flying over the truck while it goes down the freeway and a camera crew set up in the distribution center so we can watch it get low. We're going to spend $10,000 on lights, camera, action because we want to record this moment for all posterity. What is the moment? 3 hours on the road with a single trailer full of toilet paper. And that,
Imagine how many electric charging stations will need to be built across the Nullarbor to allow that. Which brings me to this story. You surely would have seen this story. This happened. Oh, hang on. What do I need to do? I need to remove you and then add you. So, oh, hang on. Did you see this? Disaster. EV owners left waiting for hours in Easter holiday chaos. They endured waits of up to 5 hours at charging stations over Easter, exposing Australia's struggling infrastructure. So it goes on to show you where people were left stranded. And drivers took to social media to reveal the grim reality of EV ownership during holiday peak. One video posted to Facebook that claimed to have waited 5 hours. The footage with over 1.3 million views showed people stranding around a single charger. A single charger powers a single vehicle with a line of cars waiting behind it. I'm sorry, but that gets me right in the feels. That's all the people who are like, oh, what petrol crisis?
Yeah. And
suffering the jocks.
If you already own an EV, don't tell people how great it is, because the greatest threat to you right now is more people driving EVs. That's the thing that could really, really screw you up right now. Now, I want to go back to this video.
Electric prime mover for this operation. It has a 700 kilowatt hour battery, and it's done over 600 kilometers in overseas trials on a single charge.
Okay, 600 kilometers on a single charge. In normal truckie terminology, it's 600 kilometers before lunch, right? And then they do another 600 kilometers, and maybe tomorrow they'll think about stopping at a servo and filling up the massive diesel tanks. They clearly picked this particular trip with this particular load because they knew that they were not going to have to recharge. Why does that matter? Well, think about it. 700 kilowatt hour battery. Let's assume that it's got fast charging capabilities, right? It can be filled up in 40 minutes or so. That means you need 1 megawatt of power supply, 1,000 kilowatts of power supply to be able to fill up a 700 kilowatt hour battery in, let's say, 40 minutes, thereabouts. It's near as makes no difference. I'm sorry, how many trucks are driving around Australia right now? Where exactly are we getting all this energy from? And of course, that's the point at which all the lovies, all the EV boosters love to kind of say, oh, but we've got to build more infrastructure. We've just got to put in the wires and put in everything.
More steel and fossil fuels.
Let me show you what their green dream looks like. You ready for this?
Yeah.
That is their green utopia. That is a whole bunch of air where copper ore used to be. This is the dream. This is actually the green dream. And when they have to turn a electric prime mover towing a single trailer full of toilet paper for 3 hours down a freeway into their halo stunt. I could show you the headlines of how this was reported. This was reported as the new era in Australian transport. That's how this was. If that's their stunt and it takes this to do it, all we need is more power lines, more transformers, more solar panels, more windmills. All we need is more dirty, great big holes in the ground. And if we just strip mine the entire planet, the environment will be saved.
Yeah. But this is the hypocrisy of the whole green movement, isn't it? No one talks about the cobalt mines in the Congo. No one talks about the aftermath of all the wastage from the solar panels and and then the windmill. What do you call them? The wind turbines.
Did we talk about on this show the abandoned solar project where it caught fire?
Yes,
right?
we did, and it's now the landowners responsibility to clean it up.
Landowners' problem. Yeah,
but this is the thing, right? So I'm all for us having solar on our roofs. Why not? That makes sense. Yep, sure. Help offset some of the costs. I'm happy with that. I'm all for everyone having a water tank. Sure thing. Australia, we are known to have bouts of drought. All of those little precautions, I'm actually very positively, I favor those positively. But when it comes to, hey, we are going to put all of our eggs in the basket of nature, hoping that we either get wind, rain, or sun, it sounds like a diabolical mess. Whereas we know that these fossil fuels and all that are tried and tested, they work. There's different ways of what's the word I was gonna say, like harnessing them and mining them that we can make it a little bit cleaner. But cutting off our nose to spite our face just seems like an absolutely redundant move, because you know what's going to happen now is like now everyone will go, oh shit, with all of this Iran petrol crisis and maybe we do need fossil fuels. better start opening up the power plants again, better start
Yeah.
refining fuel again. And so it's like, honestly, the way I look at this is just being very cynical is we close down the industry only to reopen it so we can shovel more money across to the different people again. And that's how we transfer wealth in this country.
Yeah, and the government will subsidize the reopening of the industry because, we have to give the industry certainty and blah, blah. They'll have their various ways of massaging. And ultimately, we paid for the industry to get shut down. We paid for the net zero fantasy to be pursued, and then we'll pay again for the net zero fantasy to be abandoned and for the traditional fossil fuels, et cetera, to be pursued. The problem here is that we keep thinking that the government is the solution to these problems. The government, by its very nature, creates these problems. We need the government to get out of the way and stop hindering the private sector from actually providing all of these solutions. And yes, that includes utilities and things. People have this category in their mind. But it's a utility. The private sector can't do that. No. It's a utility. It's too important to let the government anywhere near it. That's the reality of a utility.
All right, we're going to read some super chats quickly. So we've got Pro Engineer. I've never been more offended in my life. I think that's because he was looking at your face. So
no, that was because you were butchering multiple science fiction universes all at once. You have literally managed. No, don't even. You.
I don't even know what that is. I don't know what I'm doing.
We're just doing gang signs now. We're just, yeah, okay, yeah, great. All right. So we've actually shown most of the super chats.
Have we?
But we can blast them quickly. Babelfish, that is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. You know that Babelfish now exists?
I don't even know what that is.
Right. I'm not going to talk to you, Carly. I'm talking to everybody. I'm talking to all the smart people out there. The Babelfish, for all practical purposes, the Babelfish exists now. This is insane. So I was traveling in Japan with my wife, Edwina, and we were just using the phone to have conversations with people and pointing the camera at signs, and it was just translating them. For the Babelfish exists, for crying out loud. Like, that's amazing. Baz says we need to abolish our universities and the ABC. No, we need to privatize our universities and the ABC. They don't need to be abolished necessarily. They need to be. I
still want my doctors qualified, Baz. If someone's cutting me open, I want to know that they're qualified.
Yeah. This was to do with the session to do with the sessions at the Marxist conference. There was a session on avoiding uptalk, which was empty. Yes. Ethan, you need to get some help. If these are the sorts of questions you're running around asking online, then just take a breath, calm down. ZZR Hardy says, not planning on lack of fuel, planning on government intervention, which could be worse. Yes. And I would say that government intervention is what got us here in the first place because they destroyed our local industry. So yes, make sure you're ready for the government to screw things up. That's a very good idea. And that comment came up twice. Sorry, ZZR Hardy, if you've been charged for 2 super chats. That doubled up. Sorry about that, buddy. One nation, the next opposition. I think that's very likely. I think that's very likely. Now, Joe, this is the one that I was just about to put up. I agree with you, Topher. When the reduction of domestic tax increases gouging, I think this is a political football. I would like your thoughts on last week's dumpster fire speech from our great leader. Joe, I assume you got the notification a little bit late because we did actually open with that. So when the show's finished, you'll have to go back and watch the start of the show. We have talked about what an inspiring, deeply moving. I mean, I laughed, I cried. It was the whole emotional spectrum in 3 minutes for me. That speech was one for the ages. And Joe says the asteroid is called Albanese, Carlz. So the asteroid you seek is already here in Parliament House.
The problem is with Albanese, like, what's it? Hanlon's razor, right? We never attribute to malice that which can be explained by stupidity.
Explained by incompetence, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize, like, an evil dictator would be better than an incompetent one. That, like, Albanese is actually the worst.
Are you begging me for a quote from a certain literary genius? No, not that literary genius, not Tolkien. That's slightly different. C.S. Lewis, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive, because the cupidity of robber barons may be satiated. In other words, they might have enough of stealing for a while. But he who oppresses you for your own good does so without pause, because he does so with the approval of his own conscience. It's something along that line. That is the left. That is Marxism. That is socialism. We are doing everything for your good. And if you're ungrateful, then it's because you don't understand. And yes, they never rest. They never rest.
So you said you had good news.
Did I? Why would I tell a lie
Moira
like that?
Moira Deeming got a seat back.
Yeah.
That's good news.
See, I've got mixed feelings. She always was going to keep her seat, at least up until the next election. I've got mixed feelings about this. Okay, so for those that don't know, the Liberal Party tried again to get rid of Moira Deeming, this time by not pre-selecting her. Again, it all blew up in their faces. It was hilarious.
Spectacularly.
It was so good. So Moira Deeming is now 2-0. She's had like career-ending showdowns with two different power brokers in the Victorian Liberal Party. And on both occasions, it's been them who have had their political careers just completely blown up in their faces. Now, the question was, in this particular case, if they succeeded and they pre-selected Dinesh Gurisetti was the guy that went up against her, was she going to defect to One Nation? Was she going to get out of the Liberal Party? Because let's not forget, the Liberal Party have, in my opinion, been nothing but cruel to her for years on end. She was voted in as a Liberal Party MP, and very quickly they realised we don't want this woman in our ranks because she's actually a conservative, and the Liberal Party of Victoria doesn't actually want that. They're chasing the mythical middle, which is actually Marxists. They're chasing the left. And they think that someone like Moira is bad for their re-election chances. Well, the reality is the fact that Moira isn't welcome in their party is what's bad for their re-election chances. But they can't see that, and they won't see that. So they very quickly realized she's a real conservative. We need to get rid of her. They thought they had their chance when she attended the Let Women Speak rally. All the stuff with the alleged Nazi slurs and all the rest of it happened. That's what took out John Pizzuto. Moira was 1-0. They were still looking for a chance to get rid of her, and they decided to do it with pre-selection, not giving her a secure pre-selected spot in the upcoming state election. That's how they wanted to do it. They stacked the branch and put in a candidate who they thought ticked all of the minority boxes for them, and then he won, and Moira lost her spot. And then literally within 48 hours, all of that had blown up completely. The guy's career was over. I think he's had to step down from being a councillor because he was elected to the local council as well a little while ago. All of that's everything, like his whole life has been blown up, basically.
Is this the Dinesh guy?
Yeah, Dinesh. He was a councillor. I don't actually know if he has stepped down or not, but like all of that is under a cloud. So he was thinking, I'm a power broker in the back rooms of the Liberal Party. I'm a councillor.
I'm going to take on Jeff Kennett.
Like, he took on Jeff Kennett for the leadership of the Victorian Liberal Party a couple of years back. Like, this guy believed he was on the up and up, and he's one of the movers and shakers. And now all of a sudden,
illusions of grandeur.
He had a head-on collision with Moira Deeming, and I tell you, watch out. That girl has a hard head. Now, to the present, she has now secured the #1 spot in that region of the upper house, which basically guarantees her re-election. The chances of the Liberal Party not getting their #1 person elected is effectively zero. So she will win that seat. I don't know how I feel about that, because I think she's an amazing human being. I know her at a personal level, so I'm not unbiased, but I think she's an amazing human being. I think she's been put through hell. Her family's been put through hell. I would liken it to being stuck in an abusive relationship. And
I would agree.
She had the perfect opportunity to step out of that and step into, let's say, hypothetically, I don't know where her interests would lie, but hypothetically, she could step into a One Nation nomination where she would almost certainly also win, but she might actually be appreciated, and she might actually be treated with some basic respect and dignity.
I've said this before. I look at that, and I mean, you know me, I'm not someone that plays the woman card often. I don't really like, bringing it down to identity politics. But the way they have treated her, particularly through the defamation trial with John Pizzuto, that was the most disgusting, blatant example of sexism. It really was. And for a party that's trying to be Labor light and trying to appeal more to the centrists and all that, I'm like, you can say whatever you want. Your actions tell me otherwise. Your actions tell me that at the end of the day, the power brokers want the white man and be damned the woman, right? And then everything that's happened.
They want the man. The white is optional. Clearly, the white is more optional than male.
The white only works when it suits them, right?
Yeah.
Male
is mandatory. White optional. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is what tells me that the Liberal Party's completely lost their compass, because now it's all about like power broking. We know that. But it's about like what they think looks good to the voters to win that particular seat. It's got nothing to do with the founding values of Menzies. It's got nothing to do with what's better for the state or the country. All of it is about, backroom deals. And like, I think the problem is too, because they're career politicians, I think many of them may have gone into, I'm being generous, but I think many of them would have gone into politics with good ambitions and, I want to be part of the change and I want to help the state, right? I'm being generous, not all. But I think they get caught up in that murky system and it rots them all. And then because they're so close to it, right, they're tunnel visioned, they don't recognize that these school games and this juvenile behavior has such a flow-on effect for the rest of us who are at the mercy of these absolute incompetent morons. So when you see things like this blow up, you kind of go, why would we vote for you? Why?
They convince themselves that they'll be able to do all the things that they idealistically wanted to do. Because you're right, most people go into politics believing themselves to be the good guy or good girl, right? They believe that if only they had the power, they would know what to do. That's, the vast majority of people that go into politics, at least in their own minds, have good intentions. But then they go, well, I can't do, I've been elected. I can do all the good in the world now. Oh, no, I can't. I'm just one MP. Now I have to become a minister. I need the front. Then once I'm on the front bench, I'll be able to do all the things. So they play the political game, the internal factional battles, and they get to be a minister. And they're like, now I can do some good. And then they realize actually they still have no power. They can't make any decisions. In fact, if anything, they're on an even shorter leash now that they've got a front bench position. So now it's like, oh, well, I have to become the treasurer or I have to become the prime minister or the premier. And so by the time they get there, they're 12 years in to politics and they only get a shot at the top job if they've made all of the compromises along the way. If you don't make the compromises, you don't get any further. You don't progress any further. And so the only people who ever get a shot at being the prime minister or the premier are the ones who compromised the most, which means by the time they get there, they've lost all sight of why they wanted to be there in the first place, which is why we end up in the mess that we're in. Now, there's a great question here. How do we feel about a vote of no confidence, Topher? Is it something worth trying or could we end up in a worse position? This comes around just about every election. It'll come around again, I've no doubt, for the Victorian state election in November. So it's worth talking about. It's a great question. People have this idea in their head, oh, well, if enough of us don't vote, then that'll send a message. No, it will not. There is no threshold in the Australian electoral system for informal voting or for no-shows, at which point anything gets triggered. And anyone that tells you otherwise, oh, if half the people don't vote, then it triggers at X, Y, Z. No, it doesn't. There are no thresholds. There are no triggers, right? If one person votes, whoever they voted for will be recorded as receiving 100% of the votes, and they will win. Okay, that's how our system works. So no, any efforts to sort of do a vote of no confidence, vote informal, draw a dick on the ballot, all of that stuff, you are just wasting your vote. Now, people like to say, oh, don't vote, otherwise you're just legitimizing their tyranny. You're participating in the, well, okay, I get where you're coming from. But if we live in a mafia state, and that's what I consider modern Western governments to be, they are pretty much indistinguishable from a mafia state. And I have the option of trying to make the mafia slightly less bad or do nothing and let it be as bad as it wants. Am I legitimizing it by trying to make it less bad, or am I just living in the real world and caring about my kids? I would say the latter. So I think we need to get involved. We need to participate. We need to vote. Do I like it? No, I don't. But I think we need to go that way rather than the vote of no confidence, try and abstain, withhold our vote. You won't achieve anything and you will hand all the power in the system over to the people that do participate.
Whenever I hear that, and I to be fair, I hear that more than I would like. I hear people going, oh, I just, vote, draw a penis on the thing, or I just don't vote or I don't show up. I'm like, cool. You're the reason we have Albo as prime minister. The more you take yourself out of the voting pool, the more likely we are to end up with another Daniel Andrews or a Jacinta Allen or an Albo or a K. Rudd or whoever's running, right? Because at the end of the day, the people who are voting are the progressives, are the lefties. They're showing up, they're participating. So taking yourself out of the vote because you want to protest it, I'm like, great, thank you. We're going to have another 4 years of hell. So it just annoys me. That's like I hate being mean, but honestly, that's low IQ shit. That is low IQ behavior.
Another question that has come up a fair bit from Captain Lance from NARM. I'm sorry that you're doing hard time in prison. Do donkey votes go to the incumbent party? No. Simple as that. I would really encourage everybody, if you've never done it, go and be a scrutineer at the next election in your state or the next federal election. Go and do the training. There's training that comes with it to tell you sort of how it works. Wrap your mind around it and then actually show up and watch. It's one of the most heartening things because you will see that actually a lot of this stuff about fraud and this and that, and this is what's really going on behind the scenes. No, it's just nonsense. I actually genuinely believe that we have one of the best voting systems in the world, specifically because it is still so manual. We are filling out physical ballots. They're being counted by human beings. Yes, okay, I know in the Senate, it gets fed through the machines, blah, 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 but it's verified. There's a verification count that happens that's done by hand. You can be there. You can look over the shoulders of the counters. You can get them to double check things. So anytime there is no clear intent on the part of whoever filled it out, i.e. it's blank, they drew a dick, what have you, it goes to no one. And it cannot be any other way. They're not allowed to simply attribute it to the incumbent. None of that is in the system. None of that's in the rules. Informal votes, because that's what they get classified as. If it's an informal vote, it does not get counted. Now, there was one more detail on that. There is a thing called vote preservation provisions. Now, what that means, so you're required, let's say on the lower house ballot, you're required to put a number in every single box. Some people will just put a 1 in one box and then not number anymore. Now, technically, that's informal because it didn't meet the requirements, but also the intent is clear. And that's where the intent or the vote preservation provisions kick in. And they say, well, we know that they voted number 1 for that person. We don't know who their second preference would have been. So if their vote gets eliminated, if their first preference gets eliminated, then their vote is removed. It is now informal. But for as far as the intent is clear and knowable based on the paper, then we will honor that intent to the best of our ability. And that's an obligation that they didn't originally have. But there was a court case that went to the High Court where basically the AEC were challenged on the basis that they weren't actually compliant with the Constitution if they ignored informal votes because they didn't fit the rules, even where the intent was clear. So now they have to count the vote for as long as the intent is considered clear. So that's the state of play. No, donkey votes do not go to the incumbent.
Can I segue over to sort of a similar story? I saw a comment and I now can't find it. It was talking about how no one to the right of Che Guevara will win the seat where I am. I can't remember who wrote that. Basically implying that it's a lefty stronghold. It's never going to not be a lefty stronghold. And I wanted to bring up this story for you guys about the Yarra Council. So for those who don't know Melbourne very well, Yarra Council is Collingwood, Fitzroy, Carlton. It's like that real like what I used to call socialist hellhole. Like it's north of the river and it's where all the socialists are, right? And it was notoriously progressive. And they went through this phase of they had a Greens mayor and they had all the Greenies stacked the councillor's office. And so they put all these bike lanes everywhere, ripped up parking, put all these stupid bike lanes everywhere. And they're, oh, look, it's amazing. But what it did was create traffic chaos. It meant that there was no parks for businesses to have their customers come through. And now a less progressive, I actually don't know what he is. I don't know if he's Labor or if he's, I dare say he's not Liberal, but whatever. A non-progressive has been ripping them up. So I'm just going to share this because it just shows you how quickly change can happen. So you might remember last year there were, actually it was 2 years ago now. Same council again, the Yarra Council ripped up a beautiful playground that had tan bar, a slide, swings, the whole thing, ripped it up, built this concrete monstrosity with this like random big swing. And people in the neighboring apartment towers were ropeable over it. They were so angry. They're like, and it cost $1 million, right? Yeah. And it looked dystopian. It looked like Soviet Union kind of stuff. And so when people, it's the same as the straw that broke the camel's back in COVID, right? It was the closing of the children's playground that got people pissed off. I would say that that playground got people so pissed off that they voted out the Greens. So I'm going to bring up this story and just show you how quickly change can happen. So where are we? So it says, it used to be the most progressive. So Yarra Council begins narrowing bike lanes to make room for car spaces. So I'm just going to play this clip for you quickly.
I was not aware of this.
Yeah, I don't think there's any sound. Okay,
Right.
so
For those yeah.
sorry. So here we go. So
it says Yarra used to be the most progressive local government in Australia. Now it's ripping up bike lanes to put in more car parking. Yeah, okay.
And so obviously they've got the old councillor in there, the former mayor, Sophie Wade, and she's saying, you know, it used to be the most progressive local government. Now it's ripping up bike lanes and this is a travesty. And of course, they've asked some champagne socialists like this lovely lady. And I don't recognize it anymore, nor do so many locals I spoke to this morning. Why is this happening? We don't need more car parking. And this is the problem with these champagne socialists, right? Like they live in an echo chamber. They ride to work. They ride bicycles, and they can't possibly fathom that someone else might not. And well, guess what? This is democracy in action. You lost.
Well, this is the thing as well. We talk about, every culture breeds its own counterculture. We are living in an era of phenomenal change. We are literally living through the cultural answer to the sexual revolution of the late 1960s. That gave birth to the flower power movement in the 70s and all the progressive politics that dominate. 50 years later, 55 years later, we are still dominated by the cultural shift that took place in the late 1960s. We are watching right now the counter to that shift. And I think the next 5 decades, probably the rest of my life, beg your pardon, will be dominated by the product of the shift that we're watching happen right now. This shift will be probably a 4 to 6 year journey. And that will then set a new direction. It's not like everything will be static after that, but that will determine a new direction, and that direction will dominate for another 50 to 60 years.
Well, this brings me to a book recommendation. I made it before. I talked about The Fourth Turning. It came out 27 years ago. They've just released the updated version, and what it is like the book from now and what happens. So we are currently in a winter. We are, in the cycle of the weak men create hard times kind of thing. Sure. We are in a winter. And we've got about a decade left. So this all started around the 2008. That was the kind of the catalyst for this era or this turning that we're in. This is the fourth turning, right? This is the collapse of big systems. It's the explosion of fraud, all this sort of stuff. And this is cyclical. So these are historians. This isn't Pluto and Aquarius. Don't worry. This is grounded in history, all the way back to the Romans and the Greeks. And it shows you that there's 4 turnings, right? And one cycle is traditionally a human life. So 80 to 100 years. Each turning is around a generation. So about 25 years. Can be a bit more, can be a bit less. And what they're saying is we are currently in the winter. So the fourth turning, spring is around the corner, but we won't start to see it really until around 2035. That's when things will start to be like innovation will be booming. People will be sort of coming out of a fog. Don't get me wrong. We're not in for it's not apocalypse, but what we're in is a natural cycle of human evolution. We are meant to go through this because it's the catalyst for the next generation. So Gen Z, right? They are the artist generation. They are the same as the generation born in the Gilded Age. So you think about the Gilded Age when they were laying down rail tracks. 1920s,
1910s,
Yeah, it was the boom,
right? No, 1800s. Sorry, 1800s. Yeah.
Yeah, so late 1800s to the early 1910s. These are the kids born then, right? So you think about it. They were born in economic prosperity. Things were amazing. There was school, all these new opportunities. But also they were really, really overprotected by their parents. And then look what happened. That generation went into the 1930s, the Great Depression, World War II.
First World War, Depression, World War II, yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys I know not everyone's a bookworm. It's an audio book, but the fourth turning is here. What's it called? I should, now that I'm recommending it, I'll get it up. But this is a book that speaks about this, and I think it would help you guys. The fourth turning is here. It's what it's called. I think it'll help put your mind at ease.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well, regardless, and I make this point often, and it seems though this is probably one of those things that I'm going to be saying for as long as I live. It doesn't actually matter that much what era you live in, what epoch you live in, whether it's an up or a down, a collapse of your civilization, what have you. You have an obligation as an individual human being to try and make the world better than it would have been if you hadn't been here. You have an obligation to try and create more than you consume, to intervene where it's possible for you to do so, but to do that primarily on behalf of yourself and your immediate family. You're not here to save the world. None of us can. And usually those who try to save the world are the ones doing the damage or neglecting their own backyard, the people that really are inside their care. I've seen men idealistically go and try and take on the governments and do all kinds of crazy things. Meanwhile, they're not able to pay bills at home and their wife leaves them and their kids, hate them and all the rest of it. You're like, no, Go and look after your home. Go and look after your backyard and the people that have been given to you for your care. That is your responsibility, irrespective. And so whilst I think it's important to be aware of the times and what's going on around us, etc., fundamentally, it shouldn't actually change that much about your obligations and your focus. Yes, it should change your preparations and tactics, but actually who you are as a human being, your desire and your drive to create more than you consume to make the world a better place than it would have been, that should be a part of who you are, irrespective of the era in which you live. So it's like, don't get too hung up on it. Just focus on your backyard, your patch, the place that you can affect and the things that you can make better. Just focus on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Can we do a little bit more tactical voting stuff? Because there's a few more questions that have come through. So Deaf Blackfella has said, remember the Sack Dan Andrews party? Those votes went to Dan Andrews. Yes, that was the preference whisperer, Glenn Drury. He's still active. Victoria is the only state in Australia that still has what's called a group voting ticket. That means that parties direct your preferences. If you just vote number one for the party directs your preferences. It's the only place in Australia where that happens. Doesn't happen at a federal election, doesn't happen in South Australia, New South Wales, anywhere else, only in Victorian state elections. Now, you can still vote below the line and direct your own preferences. But if you just put a number one above the line, then yes, that's the one place where that happens. They are trying to change that, but I don't believe at this point. I thought maybe they were going to get it done before the election, but it looks like that won't be the case. So I think group voting tickets will still exist, probably for literally the last time at the upcoming November.
Isn't Monica Smith doing a Save the Environment party or something?
Yeah. She's playing that game, and look, good on her. I don't think she'll get a lot of traction. I don't think it's going to change any outcomes, but she's trying. She's being creative and coming up with ways to try and help. So good on her. And then this is the other one I wanted to get to. Interested, Topher, as to what you think about preference voting versus runoffs. Preference voting is runoffs. It just happens instantly. The other name for a preferential system, literally, if you were to Google it and look it up online, the alternative name that you could Google is instant runoff. That's literally the other name for a preferential system. So a preferential system is a runoff system. It just all happens instantly. It just says, who do you want to vote for? Okay, great. Now, hypothetically, if they weren't in anymore, who would you vote for out of the remaining candidates? Okay, that's interesting. Hypothetically, if neither of those two were in anymore, who would you vote, etc. And that's just what a runoff is. That's all that is. So they are one and the same thing. I think a preference system is way better because it's much more immediate. And it avoids a lot of so you get all kinds of weird stuff that goes on with runoffs. We see this in France, where some runoff candidates will actually withdraw in order to tilt the scales against certain opponents. So Marine Le Pen, not AfD, that's Germany. Anyway, Marine Le Pen's party in France, they were doing really well in a bunch of elections, and the runoff was down to, I think, 3. But 2 of them were similar, and then there was the Marine Le Pen one, and so one of them would drop out in order to not kind of split the vote. So you get a lot of those sorts of games get played with a first past the post system that then uses runoffs. You get a lot of those issues. I think we've actually got one of the best systems that you could possibly design. I think it's, barring the Victorian thing with the group voting tickets, that we need to get rid of that. The only other adjustment I would make is make it optional preferential rather than mandatory preferential. And if we could just make that change, I think we would have the closest thing to a perfect electoral system that humans are capable of making.
I'm just seeing in the chat, I think there's a little bit of negativity, people saying, we don't have 2 years to wait and all that sort of stuff. Look, I understand the sentiment, I really do, but can I just offer some wisdom? Take it with a grain of salt. You don't have to listen to me, but like, the world isn't ending. As bad as it is, Albo making terrible decisions, we're in tough times, yes, but realistically, the sky isn't falling yet.
Hang on, sorry, Carly, hang on, sorry. If we tell you all that the world is ending, will you buy more t-shirts? Because we can do that.
Wait, can we do this into a group?
There's lots of people out there that will tell you the world is ending in return for your eyeballs and your dollars, and they make a lot more money than I do. So I'm just like, look,
This is why I'm really hard on people like Chocky, and I know Topher always goes quiet when I talk about this, but I really do think there's a level of responsibility for having platforms on the internet. And I mean, Topher and I could sit here and be like, oh my God, guys, it's terrible. Like, you got to buy your first aid kit and like start prepping now. Like, next week, petrol's gone. Like, why? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't actually help any of us. Like, if anything, I know Topher and I differ in this because, if we did the other stuff, we'd make more money. But like, we want educated people. We want you to feel like what's what I'm looking for? Firstly, recognize your agency, but also feel confident in your decision-making process, not always looking left or right to see who to follow. Like, we want you guys to feel empowered to follow your own intuition, your own values, to vote how you think you should. That's how we should be working. Listen to me. I sound like Tony Robbins.
Well, you sound like me. Pro engineer, you're absolutely right. Where is the official Topher Field towel?
I'll have our audience. They get us.
I feel ashamed that I did not spot that opportunity for grift. I am unworthy.
Really good toilet paper for the apocalypse. If you guys are looking for, to stock up, I'm just saying you can learn some stuff about AI, but also, if needed, this could be great to wipe your bum.
Can I just, well, hang on. So the Topher Field OnlyFans has been suspended for a couple of weeks. The toe pics.
Whoa. No, it's not. Because every week, without fail, I open my Instagram and there is a feet pic from you on Instagram as I'm eating my breakfast. Your OnlyFans is alive and well, sir.
I literally just said it's been suspended. I didn't put one up last week and I didn't put one up today. I don't know. Have you just saved them into your favorites folder and you're coming across the same ones by accident?
I've seen those hairy toes more than I want to know.
I know you have. But I had, when I got sick and I got on some heavy meds and it's messed with my system in a pretty big way, then I've had to suspend it. Hopefully, things are going well. I'm back to the doctor tomorrow. Hopefully, feet pics will resume on Monday. That's not a promise, but that's the way things are looking at the moment. The Topher Field OnlyFans will be back.
What's scary is that your scales are reflective. So thank God you're wearing pants.
Am I though? Have you zoomed in and adjusted the brightness and bumped it up? You gotta get that brightness pumped all the way up. So can I also just say to all of the wonderful oddies, stop talking about cars. You're having way more fun in the comments, and Carly and I are just boring. Clearly,
yeah. I wish we could. Can we just turn this podcast into car chat? God,
I would love that. I would. Oh. Can you talk for like 2 minutes? I'll be back.
Can I talk for 2 minutes? What shall we talk about? Champagne socialists. Cars. Did we talk about this? Did we talk about the niece from the IRGC? I can't even remember what we've talked about. Guys, you know what I'm talking about? I don't think we've talked about this yet. So basically, in America, one of the nieces and the mother of the niece, so that would be the auntie, I don't know. Anyway, she was arrested by ICE and is facing deportation because she is the niece of one of the generals that was wiped out by the Trump administration in the first term. Anyway, turns out that it's Sharia law for thee, but not for me. Do you know this story? Do you know what I'm talking about?
What I know is that you've moved on from cars, which makes what I'm about to do seem really cheap because now all of a sudden you're talking about important life and death things. So can we finish my thing and then we'll come back to the important life and death things? Okay, everybody, if you're roughly my age, and especially if you're male, just hold on to your hats for a second. Oh, yeah. And it drives, not fast, but it drives. It has door handles that work.
Has it got a remote control?
It does have a remote control. It has a rotary that does actually rotate and turn inside the engine bay when it drives along using the motor. So it's got an engine bay, turbos, intercoolers, the whole lot. It was my birthday recently, and I decided that I wanted the Veilside body-kitted RX-7 from Fast and Furious movies that I have obsessed over since the very first time I saw one of those movies. Feast your eyes, everybody. Feast your eyes. There you go. I win the car chat for today.
And well done. That is fun. Hang on. Wait. This is my moment. Now you talk. Wait. You go.
What?
Go.
Great.
Talk.
Look, I will say, Black Eye, you're not entirely wrong. That is one of the knockoff Lego brands. I am deeply impressed with it. I was hesitant because they're still not cheap. This is a birthday present thing, but they're still not cheap. Like I'm going to buy maybe one of those in a year. And I was hesitant that I was spending my money on crappy Temu Lego. I am deeply impressed. The quality is indistinguishable. If you told me it was the real thing, I would have absolutely believed you. Just a second. And the engineering and the way it goes together, phenomenal. I'm absolutely in love with it. All right, Carly, your turn.
Look at this. Look at that. Look at that masterpiece. This was...
That is nice. That is nice.
I'm so scared to break it. G's probably watching this downstairs going, what are you doing? This is what I bought G for Christmas. This is this space shuttle with the Hubble telescope in it. How cool is that?
That is very cool. That is very, very cool. Now,
Very
can I
fun.
just say, Virtual R says, bro, you are far too old for Lego. Get some hobby wood and a laser cutter to make your own. Number one, I don't need that kind of negativity
Lego
in my
was
life.
fun. Can I just say...
Number two, I use it as time with the kids. I've
I
got
was
a
gonna say-
9-year-old and a 5-year-old who absolutely love it. Doesn't matter big or small. If there's a Lego kit, they will sit with me, a Technic, whatever, they will sit with me. They'll help find the pieces. They'll help me put it together.
Lego is the coolest, can I just say? Like, when G was making that, I was having so much fun watching him and sorting all the parts. I was a big Lego kid, and so much so that I was like, what can we do next? So all hands on deck for Lego. Good work.
Yeah. No, look, I'm actually becoming, I haven't touched Lego in 20 years, and I'm coming back to it now and really, really appreciating. And the engineering in Lego these days, this is not the same. It's not the same Lego.
This bloody thing, it was complicated. Like, it moves everything. So the arm that puts the space shuttle out into space, like that all moves.
Yeah.
So it's very impressive. It's 18 plus. I will say that. When I bought it, it said for 18 years old and above. So
yeah. And it said 18 years or over, and you put it together in 6 months. So well done. That's 17 years and 6 months faster than the packaging said.
I always wanted the big castle. Like, I always wanted the big Harry Potter castle, but it was like $500.
Couldn't care less about the Harry Potter castle. I wanted the complete set of like pirates, the ships, the forts. I wanted every single thing in that Lego universe I wanted to own. Never did. All right.
I'm old enough to remember the push to convert your car to LPG. I remember that too. I remember people having gas in the back of their cars.
Yeah.
That used to terrify me, to be honest.
No, well, it's the problem with it back then was that you just didn't get good range because they offer, especially if it was dual fuel. Number one, you lost half your boot because you still had the original fuel tank and you had the gas. And then these are old carby cars or early fuel injected cars, and they weren't tuned. They wouldn't adjust their tune for both. So you had to tune for one, and then it'd run badly on the other. But yeah, so I think it was particularly taxis used to come out as dedicated LPG. They didn't have a normal fuel tank, dedicated LPG, and that worked quite well for some people. Lego propaganda out of Iran.
Have you not seen this? The IRGC is making.
None of this.
Oh, see if I can find some. We do need to talk about the IRGC.
Well,
do we want to talk about
we can segue now. Well, so we can segue now to what you were talking about. That's the insanity of the daughter of an Islamic Republic senior official living in America, and I mean, not quite an OnlyFans, but it might as well be, and that's fine. But if you're out and about without wearing a hijab inside Tehran, you're going to get in all kinds of trouble.
All right, 2 seconds. I hope we're not going to get copyrighted for this, but this is kind of what I was trying to show you. I might play it without music, maybe, so we don't get in trouble.
Sure.
But this is essentially the pro-Iranian propaganda. Like, I'm glad AI is being used for something. So you guys can see what's going on. Yeah. This is real.
I don't understand the story.
Basically capturing all the Jews and killing people, and
right,
how it's pro-IRGC.
I can't help but notice the women didn't have their faces covered, though.
Maybe. Oh, hang on. No, they're there. There you go.
Isn't that women in the background?
No, that's women with their hijab. You're thinking Afghanistan. Afghanistan, they have to have their face is covered. In Iran, they just need the hijab. But yeah, this is like full length bloody thing here. Anyway.
Yeah. Wow.
But
that's a bit crazy.
some of the propaganda coming out of Iran's pretty hardcore, I'm not going to lie. My favorite one, though, was when they thought they lied and said they captured the stealth bomber or whatever it was. And you've got like the broken plane on the back of a truck going under a bridge. I'm like,
yeah.
me not silly. Me know that thing is bigger than that. All right. So the story I was going to bring up is about the niece and the grandniece of the IRGC. So let me just pull this up. Hang on.
Well, not of the IRGC. It's of an individual within the IRGC.
Yeah, he was the commander or something like that. So Qasem Soleimani. I'll use a reputable source so I don't get yelled at for not using left-wing media. Here we go. The Guardian, who better? So essentially, it's the niece of this guy, Qasem Soleimani, who I think Trump took out in his first presidency, or he was killed in 2022 in a US drone strike.
Yeah, okay.
Let me introduce you to his niece. Oh, no,
we can't see your screen.
Oh, well, that's probably a good thing because I'm on the wrong page. All right, so here we go. So this is the bloke who's been killed by Trump, and you guys can watch as it. So you can see this, yes?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why? See, this is why I hate the mainstream media. Boring. You're not showing me that. Where's the Daily Mail version? Just
go to the OnlyFans version.
Yeah. So okay. So
from OnlyFans.
So basically, we know that there we go. There we go. This is what I wanted. Give me the juicy stuff. So this is her. This is the niece of the general. Now, what is the first thing that you notice? Can you tell me what it is that stands out to you?
Well, besides the lip filler, because those lips definitely stand out. I mean, that's some serious quack going on right there, as well as other surgeries. She doesn't look like a particularly happy human being, but I'm guessing that's not what you're driving at.
No, you might notice that she's wearing lingerie and her hair is showing. She's wearing a lot of makeup and very westernized outfit. Behind her there, this is niche content, guys, but that is an Hermes blanket and an Hermes pillow. That blanket retails for about $4,000, $5,000. It looks like she's living a very, very lavish lifestyle. Here she is in a hotted up Humvee, and can we just point out that leg there? No, it's a Humvee.
Hummer, okay.
And also this one I thought was very interesting. Niche content again, but did you know it is illegal to walk a dog in Iran? You can't, it's a haram. Okay. They don't do dogs.
Stupid question. Is that a different person? I assume that's a different person.
Same person.
Really?
So one's the mum, one's the niece. Okay, so we've got one of our trolls in here.
So it is a different person. I was like, hang on, I'm bad with faces, but that is not the same person that has 14 tons of lip filler. That's a different person, right? Okay.
Economics, whatever, Meconomics, is a resident troll here on the Oddies. And he's like, wow, picking on a distant relative of an IRGC member. Get serious, clown. All right, how about that? Let me show you how fucking serious I am about what happens in Iran, right? So she's living in LA, living a very beautiful lifestyle, buying Hermes, walking around in lingerie. Do you know what happens to women in Iran? Let me show you, Meconomics or whatever your fucking name is. This is what happens to women in Iran. Notice how she's missing one of her fucking eyes? That's because they put acid in their faces if they're not wearing their hijab properly. Or like Maha Amini, she's killed. So you want to talk about picking on people? Tell me how someone who's benefiting off the fact that the IRGC is enslaving women in Iran is able to then go and live a very cushy, very lavish lifestyle in America. But this is what happens to the women who know her own fucking country. These pieces of shit living up in America with the safety of a green card are calling for the death of America, calling America Satan, all while protected by America. These people are fucking cowards, and you fucking lefties keep defending these people. This is the reality for Iran. This is what women face in Iran. Tell me again how I'm wrong. Tell me that that woman is doing it well in Iran, so that the distant relative of the IRGC general, why would I pick on her? Because she's a fucking hypocrite, like every other fucking lefty defending these cunts. Sorry, there's your spicy Carlz.
Well, I think that was pretty good. That was I enjoyed that. Yep.
The mic didn't cut out this time. I tried to keep it low.
Look,
but these people, I have no time for it.
Yeah.
No time for it.
And you know, people, someone tried to make the comment, how is that the fault of the woman who escaped? Well, did she escape or is she
escaped with the money from Iran, you fuckwit. So how do you not put it together?
Funded. Yeah,
she's
being
profiting
funded,
off the IRGC.
Yeah.
This is what, oh my God, I can't with the stupid. It gets me so angry. You have to talk for me when I get worked up, because I'm just like,
no. This is literally that right there. That's literally why everyone's watching. Any week where that doesn't happen, I get complaints in the mail saying you didn't fire her up enough.
Isn't this the way of the champagne socialists? Like, I mean, I talked about Hassan Piker last week and all the others. Like, you know, it's really easy to talk about these things in the safety of a Western country. It's very different reality when you're living in the country to speak up about it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. All right, now we're an hour and a half in. I don't want to have a late one tonight because it already feels an hour later than what it actually is. But what were some of the other topics that we needed to get through tonight?
Well, we've kind of talked about Moira. We've talked about Iran. I mean, look, I brought up the Australian because there's a lot unfolding. Trump's given another ultimatum about, blowing up, power plants and all that. And I've got to say,
this a little bit, yeah.
I've got to say, the ultimatums, this is where you lose me. All the profanity on Truth Social, this is where you lose me. Like, this is not helpful. It's not beneficial. What people want to see is leadership and action, and this just feels like a mess.
So it's one thing. We've talked a lot about the value of being considered unpredictable, the value of being considered someone who could do anything. That's been very, very useful to Trump. There's a line that he's crossed, I feel, into not being credible. And those are two very different things. That's you switch from he could do anything to he'll do nothing. And it's a fine line to get from one side of that to the other. But I feel like with that ultimatum he gave, and I called it out at the time, I said, ultimatums are a bad idea. They usually work against you. He gave him, I think, 24 hours to open the Straits of Hormuz or else there'd be consequences. And then all of a sudden he's saying, we'll give him 5 more days. We're in productive discussions. Well, okay, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But that doesn't look good. Now he's turned around and said Tuesday, which will be Tuesday US time. So it'll be, in sort of 36 hours for us. He's going to destroy bridges and power plants and everything else. Well, number one, I'm not sure how that helps him. We are seeing significant unrest on the streets of Iran. I don't see how harming civilian infrastructure and making life more difficult for ordinary Iranians is going to help. I'm not clear on that. But also, he's given himself another chance to fail, another thing that people can rightly point at and say, well, he's weak, he doesn't follow through, etc. It just, I don't see a win here. This is lose-lose, not win-win. Yeah. And that's,
and he's losing his base too. For Trump, like, this is midterms are later this year. And I think in his mind, this is all going to work out exactly as he plans, and everyone will be like, oh my God, thank you so much, Trump. And I mean, we talked about this when we had Dibber on, right? Like, there is so much at stake. Everyone understands this is about oil, guys. Like, remember that we know that. Yeah. But the Iranians are seeing this as an opportunity for freedom. And so they're waiting with bated breath to see if the regime will be toppled, if this will be a new dawn for Iran. So there's a lot of things that are at stake at the moment. And I think I understand a part of this is playing politics, and I understand that requires bravado and Trump being bombastic like he normally is. But then I sit here and I become very pragmatic and going, well, it's all one thing to say this. Fucking do it already. Fucking do it.
Yeah, and definitely don't. I mean, the power of the bully pulpit, which is what he has. President of the United States, everyone listens to everything he says until he just starts saying everything. And at that point, very quickly, I will say the pilot rescue is pretty clear evidence. And to me, it's pretty clear evidence that the US have established the kind of air superiority that they've been talking about. The fact that they were able to insert special forces, get the pilot out, operate on the ground. I mean, now they're, the risk of that turning into a really bloody catalyst for a ground war was very, very high. Thankfully, that hasn't been the case. But the fact that they were able to operate in that fashion and do that and pull that off, that's pretty cool. Regrettably, I think it's almost a certainty that there are US special forces on the ground in various parts of Iran right now, operating under that cover of air superiority. And I say regrettably because all it's going to take is for something to go really sideways for one of those teams operating, whether it's on Karg Island or somewhere else, and all of a sudden they send in a team to rescue them, and then it's like Black Hawk Down Mogadishu, only it snowballs into an actual ground war. I'm hypothesizing, but unfortunately that's not out of the question. And I don't trust Trump based on these last week or so. I know something shifted in Trump, and I no longer have confidence in his judgment calls. Now, I'm not turning anti-Trump. Let me be very clear. I still think he's going to turn out to be one of the greatest presidents of my lifetime. I think he's done an enormous amount of good. I think so much of what he did with Venezuela, even with Iran, I think is a good thing. And I think there's still a good chance that it's going to come to a positive conclusion. I'm not saying all is lost. He just needs to get out, blah, blah, blah. None of that nonsense. All I'm saying is the clarity and the precision with which he's operated up until a week ago seems to have gone muddy in the last week.
Yeah, we're getting some people offside here. I agree, because the thing is, right, I am a big fan of things happening clandestinely, like what they did with Maduro. I think that was exceptional. That'll go down in history as a real win for the USA, right? The messiness that's happening now is like, we've talked about this at length with previous podcasts, is now thanks to social media, we get the play-by-play. We know what's going on before the stories even got out. So with what Trump's doing now, I mean, you've got the Iranian regime putting out their propaganda. You've got all their proxies doing the same. And then you've got all the anti-Trumpers doing their version, and so on and so forth. The conversation's already messy. In my opinion, the best approach here is to get the thing done, then tell us it happened. Not, well, I'm going to do this and chest beat on social media.
Yeah.
Just do what you did with Maduro, man. Whatever play it is. And look, these people are sophisticated. They know what they're doing. They're not idiots. And I'm not undermining the US Army or the US Marines or the Navy SEALs in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is, this politics nonsense, this mess, doesn't help us win, doesn't help bring people onto our side. It doesn't help ease people's tensions and anxieties. And that's what pisses me off.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I understand a lot. I'm reading through a lot of the comments going, and there's obviously a lot of different points of view, and that's fine. I understand the need to be unpredictable. I've talked about that extensively. Once he was elected the first time, I did a rundown on what I thought he was going to be like as Trump 1.0, and I actually think I was pretty close. I didn't get much wrong. And one of the things that I said was one of the great assets he will have from a geopolitical point of view is that people believe that he could actually do anything. And that's what makes his words so powerful. That's why he was able to set foot in North Korea. It's why he was able to negotiate the Abraham Accords. It was why he was able to get people to come to the table, because they sat there and went, he's capable of anything. Now, Trump 2.0 continued in that vein. The B-2 bombing strikes on Iran's nuclear program, the arrest of Maduro going into Caracas and grabbing him, out of his own home, and various other examples that I could give. This was continuing in that same vein. I just don't feel like we're there anymore. There's been a loss of my best guess, and it is a guess, I could very well be wrong, is that he expected the regime to have crumbled by now, and it hasn't happened. And the reality is, and this has been well known for a long time, you cannot win a ground war from the air. This is a fact. I mean, when I was in the infantry, I was only reserves. I never deployed. I'm not claiming any special whatever. But we were very proud of the fact that you cannot win a war unless you put our boots on the ground in country. That's you cannot win you can't even win it with tanks. You have to have human beings on foot on the ground. You can't say you own a city, you own a country, you've won a battlefield until it's safe for a soldier to walk through on foot. That's when you've won. And we were very proud of that. You know, infantry are an arrogant bunch of so-and-sos, as are most military people, myself included. We were very proud of being infantry. We're proud of our corps. The reality is Trump seems that his objective is regime change. And I know he kind of talks around that a little bit, but fundamentally, he's made it pretty clear the Ayatollahs have got to go. Right now, he's massaging that now, but that was a pretty clear assessment of his. How do you do regime change from the air? Well, answer, you don't. What do you do when you've won the air campaign and the regime hasn't changed? That's now the question that he's got. I'm not saying it's going to lead to a bad outcome. I'm just saying I feel like there's a clarity that is no longer there. It was there and it's no longer there.
The thing that concerns me also here is, let's say there is no regime change, and for a little while everything eases off and everyone pretends to get along. What does that mean for all the protesters and the people fighting for freedom in Iran? What does that mean for all of the women who, you know, were throwing off their hijab? Does that mean an even bigger crackdown? Does that mean that, you know, come 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now, you see a theocratic regime even worse than Khamenei? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what worries me.
Yeah. And so much of what we're up against now in the Middle East is the product of the seeds that were sown from the last thing we did in the Middle East. We've talked before about the British Mandate. The carving up of so much of the Middle East was done by the British Empire following the First World War. They had the right to do it. It was the spoils of war. They could draw the lines where they wanted, but because of where they drew the lines, we created a whole bunch of other problems that we're still dealing with to this day. That's not to say that the problems today are the fault of the British Empire, nor are they the fault of the existence of Israel or anything else. That part of the world has been a basket case for thousands of years. But it is to say sitting here thinking that if we get this right, then the problems will go away. Well, hang on. We weren't the problem to start with. We're part of the problem now because we've injected ourselves into it. But actually, these problems predate any sort of Western involvement by a lot. And unfortunately, there's nothing really that we're likely to be able to do that's actually going to put a long-term end to them.
Do you know what I'm getting really fed up with? And there's a few in the chat as well, like blaming everything on Israel and everything on the Jews. Like, this has got to stop, man. This is just so tedious now. Like, do you blame Israel when you stub your toe? I think all of these conversations is just, it's so detrimental for every other normal person that's just getting on with their life. Like, I went to, I think I mentioned last week, I was hired to do photography one evening for a Jewish doctors conference kind of thing, right? And this is through a friend. And it wasn't me doing anything for the Jews. It was literally a friend of mine who happens to be Jewish saying, hey, do you want this gig? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, sure. Anyway, I rock up and it was at a synagogue and the amount of security was alarming. I understand why the security is there, to be clear. But these are people, they're doctors, right? And they're talking about young children's mental health and all the things that they're doing, and they're discussing philanthropy and all that sort of stuff. There's armed guards, there's weapons, there's security checkpoints. And these are just regular people going about their business. This bullshit is not helpful, right? You can hate Israel, you can hate Netanyahu, but blaming every single Jewish person that exists for all of this nonsense, it's like blaming all the Iranians for all the terrorists. Like, it's just so reductive. These conversations aren't beneficial. And you guys can call me a Zionist in the chat. You can say whatever you like. At the end of the day, I'm on Team Human, right? That's whose team I'm on. You know, blaming people with blanket statements and all this it's nonsense. You know, a lot of these people are just regular people going about their business, trying to get on with their lives. And a lot of the Jewish people I know are actually quite left, right? So the issue with saying it's always Israel's fault or it's always this fault, it's always like 5D chess, there's some kind of like Illuminati thing happening. None of that, like, let me say this quickly. How do you suppose that you combat that, right? Like, so the current thing on the far right is that it's all the Zionists, it's all the Illuminati, it's the elites, it's the pedophile ring, right? Sure, okay, that's what you believe. On the left side of the things, it's all the right-wing extremists, the fascists, right? It's the same argument. Basically, there's this nefarious, otherworldly thing that's at the back, you know, that's controlling everything, right? this is the ridiculousness of it. You're actually arguing the exact same point, and you are taking away all of the power from the people who could actually do something. These nebulous, shadowy figures. What's your solution? How do you combat that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say it's run by pedophiles and it's run by these people. What's your solution? There is none.
Yeah. And we talked about this before. This becomes an excuse to do nothing. The black pill is actually essentially a framework for laziness. You can justify your laziness because there's no point. They are going to win no matter what we do, or alternatively, externalize your locus of control. So you just don't have to actually do any of the work to actually try and make any sort of a difference. But also, you do disempower yourself, and so all of a sudden, whatever difference you could have made for the sake of people that you love, or even for yourself, you don't get to make anymore. Can I just quickly comment on this? So James Australian says, Germany steamrolled Poland in a fortnight with air and tanks alone. You might need to brush up on your blitzkrieg strategy. The whole point of the blitzkrieg, which is what they used in Poland and beyond, was that it was a combined arms assault. That's what made it so novel, because previously, World War I and even beyond that, they were still operating as separate corps, would do their separate things. Sometimes they'd coordinate artillery with infantry or something like that, but they weren't operating as a single unit. The Germans put together air cover over armored with infantry support. You don't send your armored out without infantry support. That's suicide. They're very easy to pick off if they don't have infantry support. So, sorry, my point stands. If you have a look at blitzkrieg tactics, including in Poland specifically, you'll find a heavy infantry involvement. And that's the problem that Trump's now got in Iran. Does he put infantry in or not? Because he can't win a ground war without them.
And look, at the end of the day as well, like I'm just trying to read all the comments. It's overwhelming sometimes. Everyone's an expert. Everyone knows better than everyone, and then all this does is actually take us away from the cause, which is to firstly get our country back on track and empower everyone to participate in, it's not the best system, but it's the system we've got. And I find these chats just don't go anywhere. We're just going around in circles.
So the other thing, just touching on that sort of the nefarious them in the background, ultimately things have to turn into policies before they can be enforced, right? We do have a system. The system is bad and broken, but it is still somewhat functional. And so you can say, the Illuminati are trying to run the world. Okay, what's the mechanism by which they're trying to run the world? It has to get turned into policy at some point. Well, they control the World Economic Forum, and then we send delegates there and they learn the policy and they come back and they implement them. Great. So if I fight them at the implementation level, I'm fighting the Illuminati, right? That's the chain. That's the chain. If we sit here and we go, no, we're going to block that piece of legislation. We're going to get engaged politically. We're going to change the numbers. We're going to get rid of the people that are on board that program and get people that are on board a different program so they can't get what they want through our parliament in Australia. Then that's how we fight the Illuminati. But the people who talk about the Illuminati don't want to do that. Right, they're like, no, you don't. It's not this. It's this. Yes, but what's the chain? What's the mechanism? How do they exercise the control? And that's ultimately why I came to the conclusion. People who are down these sorts of rabbit holes, and it doesn't have to be the Illuminati. It can be the whole Jews thing. It can be the left wing, right wing, Club of Rome, whoever it is that you want to put into that. The freaking lizard people, for all I care. In the end, it has to take shape and form in some sort of policy in order to be shoved down our throats here in Australia. And I agree that there are nefarious groups trying to shove bad policy down our throats. We've seen that. I don't disagree that that's happening, but I can't stop people from going to meet with Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. I can stop them getting whatever legislation or whatever policies they want through Parliament by helping to influence Australian politics. So let's fight at the level where we can actually make some sort of a difference.
Just to lighten the mood a little bit, we'll move away from Iran. I finally watched the Louis Theroux Manosphere documentary.
Yeah, right.
And I gotta say, like, this is the dangers of echo chambers, right? Because I'm pretty across culture, but I gotta tell you, the only person I knew who was on that was he's on Tim Pool occasionally. What's his name? Myron Gaines. That was the only guy that I knew. All the other people, all the influencers with the large following, I'd literally never heard of, right? So, you talk about these people having influence. For someone who's pretty chronically online, I didn't know who they were. And so there was talking about toxic masculinity, of course, right? Sure. And I was watching this whole documentary, and it was clear like Louis Theroux had an objective, and these guys who were being interviewed because they were doing everything live and trying to get gotchas. They obviously didn't do their homework and understand who Louis Theroux was. And it wasn't until they went on streams that people were like, oh, he's going to set you up and whatever. And you watch them kind of run scared. And they're all obviously in polyamorous relationships. The girl's not allowed to have multiple partners, but the guy is, and it's all testosterone, right? And I was watching it, and I think you'll appreciate this because you just did your values workshop. And I was watching it. Everyone's like, oh, it's masculinity. It's toxic. I was like, no. That's the superficial take, right? Were they douchebags? Yes, unequivocally. Dickheads, right? Easy. But what people missed, and the part that I find most interesting was these are morally bankrupt individuals. And what they're doing, so there was one quote, and I can't remember which one of the influencers said it, but it was the first one in the show. He came out and said, I think OnlyFans is disgusting and that women who do OnlyFans are disgusting, but I'm going to still profit off them. I'm a businessman first. I'm going to make the money. And so people are like, oh, it's misogyny. I'm like, no, it's moral bankruptcy. This person has no values, right? And so we're not facing a crisis of, fourth wave feminism and toxic masculinity. What it actually is, we've become so secular, so insular, so all about the individual, so enamored with ourselves and basically narcissism that we don't have any anchors anymore. And so that's why these things take place. That's why all of a sudden everyone hates the Jews and everyone hates this and it's all that. Because realistically, none of us have a very strong moral compass anymore. That's why the compass was in the thumbnail for today's show, because that's what we're ultimately trying to define. What do you, person watching this right now, what are your values? What do you think is most important? Then make your decisions from that. Please don't take on my values. Take on your own. Figure out what yours are, because that's what this is. So when I was watching that Manosphere documentary, all I could think of is your parents failed you. Your school failed you because you don't know who you are. You've adopted this like facade of who you are, like this bravado. I'm a man, and you're actually just playing out tropes. Oh, I'm a man that can have multiple partners. Oh, I'm a man, I drive a Lamborghini. Oh, I'm a man, I have muscles. I'm like, these are tropes. That's not your personality. That's a costume.
And it is very much a costume. I will say, people have pointed out that everyone's gone back to talking about cars and lightening the mood by talking about toxic masculinity and, women being exploited on OnlyFans. I mean, I guess that is kind of at the lighter end of our spectrum here on the show. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. A lot of these guys correctly identify some of the problems, not all of them, but some of what they point to is real. And then they prescribe completely the wrong solutions, the wrong prescriptions. And a lot of what is called toxic masculinity is actually insecurity and the mask to cover the insecurity. So when you drill down, fundamentally what is called toxic masculinity, this brosphere idea of what a man is, it is egocentric, and it is materialistic. And if you talk to anybody over the age of 40 who's ever had money or had bitches or had whatever, they will tell you how empty it is. I remember many years ago, a guy came to my church. My dad was a pastor at a church that I grew up in. And a guy called Tom Papania came to the church. And he was an American. He'd been very, very high up in his particular mafia family in his part of the US. To the point that, he had everything he wanted and he was on track. He was going to inherit the family and fabulous amounts of money and power and elected politicians groveling at his feet kind of deal. No fear of the police because they were all in their pocket. They had the whole thing buttoned down, and he was completely empty. And he was planning to kill himself, and he decided how he was going to do it. And then he felt this need to go and sort of poke his finger at God before he killed himself, and just prove beyond a shadow of doubt that not even God could save him. He talked about how he'd have a new car whenever he wanted one, but the smell just became disgusting. The new car smell became disgusting to him. It was all so empty. He could have multiple different women every night. None of it meant anything. He just felt so completely empty. And so he went to a church and he sat there through the sermon. Just sort of, none of this affects me. None of this touches me. See, there's nothing here. And then on his way out, it was one of those sort of churches where the pastor stands at the door and shakes everybody's hand on the way out. And he shakes the pastor's hand, and the pastor kind of holds onto his hand for a second, and he says, sort of something along the lines of, please don't take this the wrong way, but when I look at you, I see a child crying. Can we catch up? And, Tom's childhood had been, he'd grown up in a mafia family and all of what that sort of meant. And so that got to him and he thought, oh, I can't go to my grave with this pastor. Like, I've got to deal with this pastor now. Like, I've got to get rid of him. So he agreed to have a catch up during the week and he went in there planning to kill the pastor and then kill himself. And that was going to be the ultimate proof. If God can't even save the pastor with our meeting in the church, then that's the ultimate proof. Like, there's nothing out there. I can just kill myself. It doesn't mean anything. And this is just lightening the mood, guys. I know you were really looking forward to a lighter mood. I just thought I'd join Carly here. But this was a man who was looking for meaning. He was empty and insecure, and he had everything, but he also had nothing at the same time. And this is the same journey that these manosphere influencers are on. They're empty. There's nothing there. And he walked in there and ended up actually becoming a Christian, gave his life to Christ, renounced the mafia family. They put a price on his head. Twice someone tried to kill him. He's still, when he came to Australia, he still had bullets in his leg. He said every time he went through airport security, even back then when it was just the metal detectors, he would have to explain himself. Someone would have a wand next to his leg, finding bullets in his leg. But eventually the people that were funding the contracts had died and the police had cracked down and the corruption had been kind of ended. And so he was relatively safe by that point in time. But he was a very, very influential story. I met him personally. I heard him in person telling that story. And I've always remembered him. And whenever I come across these sort of Andrew Tate type characters, that's who I see in my head. A little boy who was damaged for whatever reason as a kid, is deeply, desperately alone and insecure, and is finding anything and everything to put around themselves as armor, as proof of success, of superiority, of testosterone, of masculinity, because they're ever so terrified that without all that stuff, you're going to see through them and you're going to see the little boy that's still crying underneath. Yeah. So I think an enormous amount of what we call toxic masculinity, it's nothing to do with masculinity. It's actually just a wounded child that is refusing to grow up and is desperately hunting for any means possible to disguise the fact that they are still a child.
And I would argue the exact same with, like, for the lack of a better way of describing it, toxic femininity, right? Like your Clem Fords and all that. These are wounded women. You know, these women who have been hurt, they've been, they've been hoodwinked or, convinced otherwise. But also, like, I look at this and fundamentally what the problem is here is the emphasis on the individual. Now, I'm all for agency and being an individual, but there comes a point where there needs to be grounding. You need to be connected to something. You need to have whether it's a loving nuclear family or a local community or like some kind of thing that keeps you grounded here with other people. And if you become completely enamored with your online persona, it's exactly that. It becomes an echo chamber. And also it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy. You become enamored with your reflection. It's like the story of the Greek god Narcissus, right? Yeah. That's the story. He falls in love with his reflection and ends up dying because he dies of thirst. And so the thing I see here is like I feel like we're distracted by the simple conversation, which is, oh, it's masculinity or it's femininity. And it's the same with the discussions around the Jews or the Muslims or the Indians or whoever. It's all of these grandiose statements about others and me. But what this is a horrible, horrible situation where we all lack values. And as you know, I'm not a particularly religious person, but so the further we've moved away from the church and become more secular, it's been replaced with things like that. I mean, from the women's perspective, I did a reel about witchery, right? And I was talking about fashion. And I cannot tell you how vehemently these people will defend these personas, this armor, this fashion thing. I had a video that I was willing to put up, and I've reconsidered it for now because I just want to be careful. But, I was going to attack the luxury market, saying, why would how do you hoodwink someone to take $11,000 off them so that they can buy a Chanel bag? And it's because of status, right? It's because you think that status elevates you. What really elevates you is, conviction in yourself and having confidence and self-esteem. That's what elevates you. You don't need a Chanel bag.
And purpose, a reason to get out of bed. I genuinely believe that both men and women, I think humans, are wired to serve. This is, the greatest calling that Jesus had for his disciples, besides just literally Jesus himself, was to serve others. If you want to be great in God's kingdom, learn to be the servant of all. That wasn't a prescription for misery. That's a prescription for joy and fulfillment and purpose and meaning in life. And we miss this, and we focus so much on, am I getting what I want? And not enough on, am I actually bringing service? And I've said this before, my working definition for healthy masculinity and healthy femininity, well, in the case of healthy masculinity, I believe that the working definition is strength in service. And for femininity, I believe the working definition is softness in service. Both are in service. This is our highest calling. This is actually where we find our deepest meaning and our greatest value. And for so many of the people that are out there having a crisis of meaning, finding something worth serving in, finding someone or some cause or some objective that is worth sacrificing for is actually the gateway, besides Jesus himself. That's the gateway to having a life with purpose and meaning.
There's a book that I just bought today. It's from a young girl called Freya. Gosh, what's her name? I had it up on
Freya
screen.
Leach.
Is it
Freya
that?
Leach?
No, Freya India. She's a
Okay, I don't
25-year-old
know.
Gen Z.
Okay.
And she's got a book out called Girls, and it's talking about the commodification of girls, of girlhood, as in, you know, everything about what young people have been told is to create a personal brand and sell themselves on the internet. And I'll you know, I don't want to go too far into this. I know we've got to wrap up soon, but isn't that true? Isn't that where we've become, where our digital version of ourselves is more valuable than the physical? That the way we're perceived by people online is more valuable than the real world perception of ourselves. And that's why I think people fall in for these things. And what I realized watching that Louis Theroux documentary is that we've been hoodwinked. We think toxic masculinity is a real thing. It's not. It's an internet thing. It doesn't actually exist. It exists in these personas online. In the reality, in the real world, these people, they're scared of their own reflections. They're scared of their own shadows. Like, they drive rented Lamborghinis and wear overpriced suits. These people are miserable. They're lonely and they're sad. Why are we fearful of that? These people don't have any impact.
Yeah. And honestly, if we all just turned away, then they would very quickly have to go and get a real job. But unfortunately, that's not the way the internet works. A couple of things very quickly before we do have to wind up. Got a question here from Beer Battered Gummy Shark. Where is Topher's accent from? What influenced it, American or other? There is actually a story there. So I studied acting for a little while. I got very flexible with my accents. I could do from full plumb British to Cockney to various forms of Australian to a couple of American. I always struggled a bit more with the American ones than I did with the British ones, but I could do a pretty good spectrum. South African as well. And then I kind of moved away from the acting and I started doing the political commentary. And I had to decide, what accent do I actually want to have going forward? Because it's not something we normally consciously decide, but once you've got conscious control over it, it's kind of like, well, now what do I want it to be? And what I did was I very deliberately picked out of the spectrum of sounds and structures of how you create sound in your head, what I believe to be an ideal English-speaking accent to be universally understood by everybody, even when speaking very fast. So I had to bring some R's in slightly, because if it's all open, it's all R's, you lose a bunch of people who are particularly on the American end of the spectrum. You also lose Irish out of that a little bit. And you just sort of have to be careful and play. So I literally constructed the accent that you hear now. The problem is I got so comfortable with it, and I haven't trained in acting now for the better part of 20 odd years. I've lost the ability to change it. This is now my accent. This is literally how I talk. And I can try and do accents, but I sound as bad as anybody else. I no longer have that knack. I'd need to go back into training to get it back. So this is now how I sound. And it's funny, I get people guessing I'm from South Africa. I get people guessing that I'm from the US or maybe more Canada, but I don't have the oot that Canadians have. I deliberately avoided that. So that rules Canada out. The oot, the boot.
And you don't say A at the end of everything. A?
Yeah, yes. Well, that rules out Canada and Queensland. So it's quite funny having people guess what my accent is. It is literally, it's a custom accent that I constructed at a time when I knew how, and I no longer know how to change.
I saw this. I love Carlz's accent. Do you know what? As bogan as I sound at times, I had an American accent for a really long time, and I tried so hard to get rid of it because I was bullied so much in school that I then overemphasized the bogan. But when I go to America, I slip straight into it. And then I sound like one of those twats who's trying to mimic Americans. Like, have you heard Sydney Watson's accent? It's like
Yeah.
half American, half Australian. That's what I used
Yeah,
to sound like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't want that. I didn't. So I brought in a couple of South African elements, which is probably ironically most audible when I say South African.
It's the
South
hardest
African.
thing to do.
No, I disagree. I love doing South African back when I was good at it. So I have predominantly an educated Australian accent. That's the core of it, with some American elements and some South African elements brought in, and between them, it creates what you hear.
The Bogan accent is the best. Thank you. I agree. Thank you, friends, for starting with it. Do you know what I've realized as well? Just on the enunciation thing, we speak very fast as Australians.
Yeah.
And when I
Yeah.
first started doing my reels, I just spoke as normal, right? I wasn't really putting on an accent. And I've had a lot of feedback saying, Carly, because you speak so fast, you're actually really hard to understand for an American. And so I was like watching a couple of videos, and I was watching Vin, gosh, what's his name? Vin Tan, the Vietnamese guy, the Aussie Vietnamese guy who does speaking coaching. Vin Tan?
Dunno. Dunno.
But anyway. And he was saying you need to use your face muscles. Australians are really lazy and we don't use our face muscles. So he's
Yeah.
like, in the morning, there's an exercise that you do where you overemphasize your face moving. And so I've been practicing that. And now Ving Tang, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. He's awesome. So I've been practicing that. And now everyone's like, oh, I love the posh accent you're putting on. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just trying to speak.
We need to finish on this. So thank you, Ethan, for asking. I was getting to it, and you've asked again. Can FON or One Nation win enough seats to win the 2028 election? I take win to mean form government in their own right. Almost certainly not, but it's not impossible. It's exceptionally unlikely. I think it is very likely that they will get enough seats to form some form of coalition government with the Liberal National Party. Who would be the senior member of that government? I'm not sure. I'm not going to predict. I think it's entirely possible that they could form a coalition government alongside the Liberal National Party. It's not impossible for them to actually win a majority of seats, but it is exceptionally unlikely. I think probably the most likely outcome is a coalition government alongside the Liberal National Party. The next most likely outcome is a Labor win. And then an outright One Nation win would be somewhere in very exceptionally unlikely. However, they don't need to win outright to completely transform our politics, and in a good way. Balance of power in the lower house, just being needed by whoever forms government as a guarantor of supply in the lower house. That alone would give them an enormous amount of leverage. That's how the Greens changed our politics so much, is just simply holding the balance of power, in their case, in the upper house, in the Senate. I think One Nation could potentially get the balance of power in the lower house, which is a tremendously powerful position to be in. So can they? Yes. Will they? Probably not. But whatever they do will be good for us.
We were going to talk about this, but I've seen this comment pop up. This one here. Any comments on people claiming the Artemis mission is another fake before you close out? Look, I date a man who is into this stuff, right? So I have consumed a lot of space content in my time. And I have watched nearly every SpaceX launch now. And we rewatched them all. Who knew you could watch a montage of them? And I want to believe we're doing it, but I'm still dubious on the fact I don't think we went to the moon. My boyfriend very much disagrees with me, but
I'm with your boyfriend. We went to the moon, then we got stupid, and now we're finally going back into space again. I think the whole Artemis thing is overblown on the basis that they're like, oh, we're going the furthest into space we've ever been. You're just orbiting the moon at a slightly higher altitude than before. Like, that's like, just don't, like, you're not going to Mars or anything actually cool. You're just going a little tiny bit further, but still within sort of that binary orbit of Earth and moon. But it is pretty cool, and I'm glad they're doing it again. But honestly, call me when we're actually sending a mission to Mars. That's when I'll start to pay real attention.
I will say, like I'm obsessed with space from a planets and stars kind of thing, and I love it when we get the telescope out and look at them. Like, I believe the planets are up there. I'm not worried about that. Have we got to the moon though? I don't know. I'm a bit iffy on that.
This is a pretty common sort of sentiment. So be a battered gummy shark saying able to land on the moon 80 years ago and not once since. So a couple of things there. Sentiments and attitudes towards risk changed enormously. Let's not forget
there's no gold on the moon. If there was something to get out of it, we'd be there.
That was the second point. There's no business case. They've been there, they've got rocks. There was actually no business case to go back. But actually, in the first instance, attitudes towards risk changed. Coming out of the Second World War, look at Formula One. Look at the killing years of Formula One. We had the fighter pilots who were used to 10% of them dying every week during the war. The war ended and they went looking for thrills. They started racing cars, and 10% of them would die in a season of Formula One every single year. And no one really thought twice about it. It's a high risk sport. That's just what it is. You put a bunch of people and try and launch them into space, or try and break the sound barrier, or do any of these things. A bunch of people are going to die. That's why being a test pilot got you all the chicks. Right? It was cool. You were daring. You were amazing. That's sort of, it ran on that post-war life is not cheap, but risking your life is noble and exciting, and to be elevated, to be venerated, to be respected. And then safetyism, safety culture began to creep in. And we see that towards the end of the Apollo missions, particularly after, Apollo 13, they all survived. Was it Apollo 15? They lost them all. There was one not long afterwards. I think they lost everybody. And then the space shuttles, we had a couple of disasters with the space shuttles. And I think increasingly people just became, or the agencies became incredibly risk averse. They don't want the bad headlines. Then when you add to that, what's the business case? Why are we going back to the moon? There's nothing there that is of any interest or value to us here on Earth. We've already got what we needed for the experiments that we've done. There wasn't a purpose for it. So the agency, NASA agency, in order to justify its own existence, had to shift its attention back to things that were actually useful and valuable here on Earth. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, a bad focus to have. Now we are much wealthier as a civilization, and the cost of going to the moon relative to GDP is a fraction of what it was back then. The cost of going to Mars as a proportion of GDP is a fraction of what going to the moon cost 75 whatever years ago. So the economics has shifted, and I actually think, as part of the big cultural shift that we're observing, I think we're actually heading back towards an era where risk is accepted once again, where death and things going wrong is actually an acceptable part of product development. Not in a callous kind of way, but we're no longer, every life is super precious. That mentality, I think, is taking a bit more of a backseat. And G-Man's point here is spot on. Having a moon base as a base from which to launch in order to get to, for example, Mars makes a lot of sense. You have less gravity to escape, so the amount of fuel you need on the rocket just to escape gravity is lower. But also, obviously, they would time it correctly so that you're taking advantage of the velocity of the moon already to get you off in the correct direction with that little bit of extra velocity, etc. So, I think it's interesting. I believe it happened. I believe it happened back in the day. I believe they're doing what they say they're doing right now.
That's a dark joke. I was born as the Challenger space shuttle blew up. My mum told me that, like, when she first held me in her arms, she watched the space shuttle blow up.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm like,
so it was your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And also Chernobyl melted down. So I'm just saying.
Well, there you go.
I seem to be cataclysmic.
I need bed.
All right. Are you going to grift?
Topherfield.com. Go and spend all your money. Done. You going to grift?
Pathetic. Yeah. So masterclass starts Monday.
There's no point. They're going to spend all their money on mine. So there's no point you grifting. They've got no money left.
Well, based on what I said about the manosphere, if anyone's like worried about their values, go do that, because you need to learn what your values are. But if anyone wants to learn about AI, we start on Thursday. Don't worry if you can't come to the live show or the live taping. You can rewatch it, but you will learn all about AI. This book is included, the ebook, not the physical book. You can get the physical book. CarlzJSöda.com. That'd be great. That's my grift.
Cool.
That's all I got.
All right, everybody. Peace out.
I need to go eat a hot cross bun. I'm hungry.
You do that. Just try not to have too much fun. Bye.
All right.
Oops. Let me hit the end show, not the leave studio, because that would just leave you in the lurch.
Let's keep everyone entertained.
Yeah. All right. I'm just setting it out.